Chapter 2655, Influence. Jian Chen returned to the Tian Yuan clan. Currently, the clan was in a state of high vigilance, as they were ready for a possible second assassination attempt. Jian Chen made the first heavenly layer infinite prime, Heya, watch over Shiyu. Fortunately, Shiyu had many measures to protect herself. As a result, she did not suffer any too severe wounds when the Shadow Prince personally tried to assassinate her. With some healing pills, she made a full recovery very soon. Sister Shiyu, how are you? How are your wounds? Do they hurt? Mo Yan clutched Shiyu's hand tightly from beside her. Mo Yan's eyes were filled with tears as she expressed her worry and pain. Mo Yan, didn't I tell you that I'm fine already? It's only a small wound. I'll be fine very soon. Shiyu smiled without minding it too much as she stretched her arms and legs casually. Ever since she began to manage the various affairs of the Tian Yuan clan, she rarely smiled. Her face would be stern at almost all times as she dedicated herself to the clan. She would only show this smile when she saw Mo Yan. Even blood sprayed from you, yet you still say you're fine. Humph. Once Brother Jian Chen returns, I'll definitely get him to avenge you. Mo Yan swung her fist furiously. Just when she finished speaking, she saw Jian Chen walk in from outside. Her face immediately lit up, and she left Shiyu's side without any hesitation. She ran over to Jian Chen and grabbed his arm in an extremely natural manner. Brother Jian Chen, you've finally returned. Did you catch the assassin? Brother Jian Chen, Sister Shiyu's wounds were so deep. You have to avenge her. Don't worry, I've already avenged her. Mo Yan, you should return first. There's something I have to talk about with your sister Shiyu, said Jian Chen. All right then. You guys talk. I'll come find you after you are done. Mo Yan knew Jian Chen had important matters to discuss with Shiyu. She was never interested in these matters, which was why she never asked about the affairs of the clan. The person who tried to assassinate you was a fifth heavenly layer infinite prime. He was the Shadow Prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Jian Chen looked at Shiyu and became rather stern. I think that the Shadow Core of the Blood Sun Empire still have quite a number of lingering forces. They're skilled at assassination, and they move through the dark. They'll probably pose quite the problem to those who leave the clan to attend to certain affairs. The Shadow Prince. It's actually him, Shiyu murmured softly. A gleam of vicious light flashed through her eyes, and she said, Don't worry, Patriarch. I will handle this matter. Jian Chen nodded before sighing softly. Actually, there are a lot of innocent people from the Blood Sun Empire. If there really are people like that who have managed to survive somehow, just spare them. There has already been enough blood spilt in this war that enveloped the entire plain. Jian Chen knew that the destruction of the Blood Sun Empire was not the Tian Yuan clan's fault entirely, as the only person they truly had grievances with was the Ninth Prince. The destruction of the Blood Sun Empire was a result of the Four Symbols Alliance's defeat. The Blood Sun Empire was a part of the Four Symbols Alliance. Naturally, the Blood Sun Empire would not be able to avoid the same fate once the Four Symbols Alliance was destroyed. Even if the Tian Yuan clan did nothing, the Righteous Alliance would not spare them. It was just that the person to blame had become the Tian Yuan clan. It had become Shiyu. In the next few days, the Tian Yuan clan cleansed the remaining forces of the Blood Sun Empire. They basically used all the power they possessed to scour the entire southern region for traces of the Shadow Core. Basically all the organizations in the southern region used everything they had to cooperate with the Tian Yuan clan. They left no stone unturned in the southern region. The Tian Yuan clan's operation this time truly demonstrated its immense influence in the southern region. With a single call, the world would respond. With a single order, no one dared to disobey. At the same time, the revenge from the Shadow Core truly began. Members of the Tian Yuan clan scattered across the southern region faced their assassination attempts. Members of the clan died, but people from the Shadow Core fell in battle as well. It was not just the Tian Yuan clan. Even the clans that controlled the Blood Sun Empire faced assassinations and suffered losses. However, the assassinations from the Shadow Corps gradually stopped after a few days, as their targets, both the Tian Yuan clan and the clans in control of the Blood Sun Empire, were in a highly alert state. The Shadow Corps would pay a certain price whenever they were mobilized, so they suffered rather heavy losses as well. During this time, the number of primordial realm protectors in the Tian Yuan clan increased once again because the clan was now huge. In order to fulfill the needs for development, they were forced to recruit new protectors and godhood cultivators to expand the clan's forces. The Righteous Alliance had contacted Jian Chen as well. They wanted to give the northern and western regions to the Tian Yuan clan so that the Tian Yuan clan could be in control. Behind the Tian Yuan clan was the martial soul lineage. The Righteous Alliance had personally witnessed the strength of the martial soul lineage. At the same time, they were the final victors and managed to eliminate the Four Symbols Alliance only because of the martial soul lineage. As a result, the Righteous Alliance wanted to gift the western and northern regions to the Tian Yuan clan to maintain a friendly relationship. However, Jian Chen managed to decline indirectly. He was already limiting the development of the Tian Yuan clan, so he naturally did not wish to see the clan expand into the two other regions. Jian Chen did not care about the level of influence the Tian Yuan clan had on the Cloud Plain or the size of its territory. He only hoped the people of the Tian Yuan clan could remain gathered in one location so that he could make them retreat in the shortest amount of time possible when they needed to. However, after Jian Chen turned down the western region, the Jinjian Empire came to visit the Tian Yuan clan. At the same time, they brought many impressive princesses, hoping to engage them to the Tian Yuan clan. During the recent war, the Jinjian Empire of the western region had wavered, which displeased the Righteous Alliance. As soon as the war ended, the Jinjian Empire was the first to be booted from the alliance. The Righteous Alliance's attitude towards the empire led to some upheaval in the empire. Many organizations began to scheme, and they actually began to show signs of banding together and revolting. Originally, the Jinjian Empire wanted to suppress them, but they had never thought that they would see the shadow of the Shi Empire of the northern region and the Zihao Empire of the eastern region behind these organizations. Now that these two empires were extending their paws over, the Jinjian Empire immediately became quite frightened. Chapter 2656, Sovereign Fruit of the Dragon God. The two empires were still members of the Righteous Alliance, so they represented the Righteous Alliance to a certain extent. In particular, the Shi Empire had a very close relationship with the Tian Yuan clan, so their backing was extremely powerful. This was why the Jinjian Empire had come to the Tian Yuan clan in such a hurry, doing all that they could to ally themselves with the Tian Yuan clan. They knew extremely well that after they were kicked out of the Righteous Alliance, the only thing that could save their Jinjian Empire was the Tian Yuan clan. Jian Chen did not want to worry about these ulterior motives at all, so he left it all to Shi Yu to handle. However, just when Shi Yu received the envoys from the Jinjian Empire, the Shi Empire sent over envoys as well. They ended up speaking with Shi Yu individually first. Of all the times that the envoys from the Shi Empire could pick, they just happened to pick a time like this. As a result, the envoys from the Jinjian Empire were left unsettled and uneasy. Jian Chen did not pay attention to the conflict between the organizations on the Cloud Plain. Instead, he remained in the Forbidden Grounds as he carefully inspected Nubi's wounds. Nubi's had awakened a long time ago. However, his injuries were still extremely severe. It would be very difficult for him to make a complete recovery. Nubi's sat on the ground in his human form. His face was extremely pale and haggard. He seemed sickly. Jian Chen, Shengguan Mu'er, Qing Yishuan, and Su Ran were all gathered there. They all frowned as the atmosphere weighed heavily. Nubi said weakly, "Even though it would be difficult for me to recover, I would still be able to recover if I suffered these injuries under ordinary circumstances. However, I never thought that my bloodline would just happen to evolve at that time. I was heavily injured before I finished evolving, forcefully disrupting the evolution. Not only did it harm my vitality, but even my bloodline was damaged." Nubi sighed before continuing, "The evolution that I, the great newbies, have been dreaming of will probably come to a stop here. No matter how much essence I absorb from my clansmen, I won't be able to make up for the damage to my bloodline. Senior Su, you are a chaotic prime, someone in possession of insight and knowledge far greater than what we can ever match up to. May I ask if you know how to heal Nubi's bloodline? Qing Yishuan asked. She and Nubis both came from the Tian Yuan continent after all, so they naturally developed a sense of closeness in this foreign land. Now that she saw that Nubi's bloodline had been damaged, and his evolution had come to a halt, she felt sympathy for him. Jian Chen and Shangguan Mu'er both looked at Su Ran eagerly. Damage to the bloodline was completely different from damage to the body. There were plenty of pills that could heal bodily damage. Even for damage to the soul, they could produce heavenly resources on par with the pills. However, there was nothing they could do about damage to the bloodline. They did not even know what kind of heavenly resource or what kind of method was required to heal damage to the bloodline. There were far too few examples of damaging someone's bloodline like what Nubi suffered. It was extremely rare. And for that reason, the method for healing damage to the bloodline was rare as well. Su Ran pondered seriously for a while before shaking her head gently. Jian Chen could not help but secretly sigh after seeing that even Su Ran was powerless. Su Ran's origins were anything but ordinary. She was technically the Anata Grand Exalt's grand disciple. Although she had never been recognized by the Anata Grand Exalt, what she received was still extremely impressive. She knew many things. Since even Su Ran did not know the method, Jian Chen's heart sank with disappointment. Nubis, don't worry. I'll definitely find a way to heal the damage to your bloodline so that you can keep evolving, Jian Chen swore. If Nubi's bloodline could not recover, it meant that a majority of his future accomplishments had been forcefully removed. Such a matter was difficult for any cultivator to accept. Master, we know something that can heal Nubi's bloodline. At this moment, the voice of one of the sword spirits rang out in Jian Chen's head again after all this time. It came from Zi Ying. The moment the voice rang out, Jian Chen shifted his attention to the two of them. After all this time, Jian Chen discovered that Zi Ying and Qing Sua's bodies had consolidated further. Moreover, they had become quite a lot more powerful than before. As their strength recovered, their ability to hide became greater and greater as well. Coupled with Jian Chen's cooperation, even high-level Grand Primes would struggle to discover the existence of the sword spirits if Jian Chen stood before. Yeah, Master. Not only will this item be able to repair Nubi's damaged bloodline, but it will even allow his bloodline to change drastically, allowing him to metamorphose, said Qing Sua. Jian Chen gathered his attention with that. He immediately asked, Zi Ying, Qing Sua, tell me what it is called. Where can you get it? It's called the sovereign fruit of the dragon god. It's the sacred fruit of the dragon clan. All members of the dragon clan can make a complete recovery with it. It's basically equivalent to a second life. Of course, only members of the dragon clan can use the sovereign fruit of the dragon god. It will only be detrimental if people not from the dragon clan ingest it. Jian Chen was rather puzzled with that. Since only members of the dragon clan could use the sovereign fruit of the dragon god, why would it be able to heal the damage to Nubis and allow him to benefit greatly? However, before Jian Chen could ask, the sword spirits explained, the path of evolution that Nubis currently walks is towards ancestral dragons. Although he's nowhere close to being a part of the dragon clan, his bloodline has parted from the bloodline of the golden-striped silver snakes after several evolutions. He's gradually approaching the bloodline of the dragon clan. Of course, if that was it, the sovereign fruit of the dragon god would still be detrimental to him. However, a fruit with Xianhuang Qi would be a completely different case. Xianhuang Qi possesses the power of creation. As a result, if the sovereign fruit of the dragon god possesses Xianhuang Qi, not only will it be able to deal with all of Nubi's problems, but he'll even be able to benefit greatly. It will urge on the evolution of his bloodline. I've never heard of this fruit before, so where would we find it? Moreover, one that possesses Xianhuang Qi, Jian Chen frowned. He was rather troubled. Master, you don't need to worry about this. Remember how there was an entrance to a Xianhuang microcosm in the sea realm within the lower world you were in before? As long as you can reach its depths, you'll definitely find a sovereign fruit of the dragon god, said Qing Suo. Jian Chen's eyes immediately lit up from that. The lower world that the sword spirits mentioned was naturally the one where the Tian Yuan continent resided in. There was indeed an entrance to a Xianhuang microcosm there. However, that Xianhuang microcosm is of a very high level. There will definitely be extremely powerful Xianhuang beasts in there. You basically won't be able to set foot in there without the strength of an immortal exalt, Qing Suo continued. The so-called immortal exalt she spoke of was equivalent to Grand Prime of the Saints' world. Chapter 2657, News about Sacred Feather. It's not hard to find an immortal exalt. I do have a very good person in mind. With that senior strength, he'll be able to roam the Xianhuang microcosm uninhibited. However, the Xianhuang microcosm only opens once every 10,000 years. It has only been a few hundred years since it last opened, so I probably have to wait for over 9,000 years before I can get the sovereign fruit of the dragon god? Jian Chen said. His conversation with the sword spirits completely happened in his mind. With a single thought, he could convey a lot of information. There was no need for him to speak or let anyone else know about their conversation. Master, are you speaking of Mo Tianyun? Ziying asked. He and Qing Suo placed a great deal of importance on Mo Tianyun. Yeah, Senior Mo Tianyun. He's trustworthy, said Jian Chen. He was not confident about gaining battle prowess on par with Grand Primes during this period of time. Out of all the experts at that level he knew, he only trusted Mo Tianyun. Shangguan Mu'er, Qing Yishuan, and Su Ran saw how Jian Chen remained quiet within the water cloud hall, so they all thought he was in sorrow about Nubi's. Unfortunately, there really was nothing that they could do about Nubi's bloodline, so the three of them remained silent as well. At that moment, the atmosphere within the water cloud hall became rather heavy. But suddenly, the water cloud hall began to tremble violently, and this was soon followed by a frantic warning from the artifact spirit. Oh no, Master, someone extremely powerful has intruded. Shangguan Mu'er, Qing Yishuan, Su Ran, and Jian Chen were all surprised. However, before they could respond, a rather young voice rang out, Hee, don't be nervous. I have no ill intentions for coming here. Jian Chen, have you dealt with the recent matters on the cloud plane? With that, the heartless child appeared silently before the four of them. He was just too powerful. Although the water cloud hall was a medium-quality god artifact with its artifact spirit intact, it was unable to stop him. As a result, the divine hall posed no obstruction to his forceful intrusion. The artifact spirit could only stare at him powerlessly. Su Ran, Qing Yishuan, and Shangguan Mu'er became cautious when they saw the heartless child. In particular, Su Ran became stern. She understood very well that no ordinary Grand Prime could intrude upon the water cloud hall so easily. The child's cultivation was truly unfathomable. So it's Senior who has come to visit. Please forgive me for failing to welcome you. Jian Chen immediately clasped his fist in greeting. Although he had no idea why the heartless child had come looking for him, the child did save his life a few days ago after all. Though, may I ask why Senior is concerned about whether I've dealt with the matters on the cloud plane? Is Senior in need of me? Jian Chen continued to ask. He felt curious and puzzled. He believed that the heartless child held some ulterior motives in assisting him. I've come for two matters. The first matter is a piece of news I bring to you. As for the second matter, it's based off the first. I want you to help me with something small, the heartless child said relaxedly. May I ask what Senior needs from me? However, my strength is nothing before Senior, so I may not be capable of assisting Senior. Jian Chen clasped his fist. The heartless child sniggered. Jian Chen, don't belittle yourself. Your strength is indeed nothing before me, but you are an extremely great choice under certain circumstances. You speak too greatly of me, senior. Jian Chen was extremely modest. All right, let's not waste any time. I'll mention what I need help with later. I'll tell you the news now. Though, due to some reasons, it's best if other people don't know about this, so let's talk elsewhere, the heartless child said indifferently before waving his hand. Immediately, a powerful energy wrapped around Jian Chen. The two of them vanished. The heartless child did not take Jian Chen that far away. They simply arrived in the clouds above the Tianyuan clan. The heartless child extended a finger, and the sea of clouds before him immediately pulsed. Two snow-white seats in a small, round table extended from the sea of clouds. Whether it be the seats or the table, they were all condensed from the sea of clouds. The heartless child clearly possessed a great ability to transform things. His techniques were unfathomable, and even just the furniture he condensed from the clouds was far tougher than rock. Moreover, Jian Chen could sense the complicated power of ways circulating within the furniture, resonating with the world and abiding by some truth of order. Please sit. The heartless child gestured towards Jian Chen. He sat down on one of the seats, and with a wave of his hand, a few pieces of spiritual fruit immediately appeared. They gave off quite a fragrance. He picked up one of them casually and bit into it. You should be familiar with a kid called Sacred Feather. What? Sacred Feather? Jian Chen was not particularly attentive at the very start, but he was immediately surprised when he heard the mention of Sacred Feather's name. His eyes shone brightly, and he asked immediately, Senior, you have news about Sacred Feather? Ever since Sacred Feather left, Jian Chen had received no more news about him. He had no idea how Sacred Feather was doing right now. The vast saint's world was filled with danger. It was a place where slaughter could be seen anywhere. Even primordial realm experts died regularly, so Jian Chen really was rather worried when Sacred Feather left to roam the saint's world as an overgod. After all, he and Sacred Feather were closer than ordinary friends. Jian Chen had carried Sacred Father in his arms the moment the latter was born. He had fled for their lives, escaping the pursuit of enemies. They had gone through thick and thin together. Even though he and Sacred Feather referred to each other as brothers, Jian Chen treated him more like a son. He had basically raised Sacred Feather alone. That was more than enough to explain the depth of their relationship. I do indeed have news about him, but his current situation is not great. He's in life-threatening danger, the heartless child munched on his fruit as he said with a full mouth. That seemed to trigger Jian Chen's most sensitive nerve. He leapt to his feet and said, Senior, what has happened to Sacred Feather? Where is he right now? The heartless child glanced at Jian Chen. He was not displeased by Jian Chen's violent reaction. Instead, he secretly rejoiced. However, he showed none of it. Calm down. Listen to me first. There's a miniature world called the World of the Fallen Beast in the remnants of the world where the spirit sages came from. The Sacred Feather you care about entered the World of the Fallen Beast. Of course, there are plenty of people who go into the World of the Fallen Beast within the ruins of the world where the spirit sages came from. It would not be a big deal if he entered that place at any other time, but he just happened to choose the wrong time. He ended up creating devastating trouble for himself. The World of the Fallen Beast was created upon the death of an ancient beast that had reached the 9th heavenly layer of Grand Prime, one so powerful that even among the 9th heavenly layer, there would be very few people that could match up to it. After countless years of evolution, the World of the Fallen Beast turned into a miniature world teeming with life. And the entire World of the Fallen Beast is ruled by a race called Darkstar. The Darkstar race are basically the rulers of that world. Sacred Feather has been captured by them. Jian Chen sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. He frowned as he remained silent. He had never heard of the World of the Fallen Beast or the Darkstar race prior to this. Now that Sacred Feather had ended up in their hands, Jian Chen became extremely worried. Chapter 2658, The Darkstar Race, Senior. What strength does the Darkstar race possess? Jian Chen asked grimly. Sacred Feather had been captured and was in constant danger. This made Jian Chen very worried. At the same time, he thought through all the experts that he knew. He pondered about how he could save Sacred Feather. However, there was one irrefutable fact. Regardless of the price, he would save Sacred Feather. Regarding the strength of the Dark Star race, the heartless child looked at Jian Chen mysteriously. In particular, when he saw how grim Jian Chen was, he could not help but smile for some reason. I had no interest in learning their exact strength, but I do know about their greatest expert. He's actually also the Dark Star Emperor who rules the Dark Star race. He's a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime right now. What? Jian Chen was stunned. He began to doubt his ears when he heard the strength of their strongest expert, the Dark Star Emperor. Senior, are you certain that their strongest member is a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime? Jian Chen asked in disbelief. Do you feel very surprised? Experts in the Saints' world are plentiful. Who knows how many 9th heavenly layer infinite primes there are? If the Dark Star race was placed on the cloud plane, they wouldn't even be as great as the Blood Sun Empire, so how would they be able to rule over the world of the fallen beast? The heartless child looked at Jian Chen with a faint smile. It is rather surprising, replied Jian Chen. The pressure he felt decreased drastically after he got to know the Dark Star race. If the Dark Star race possessed a supreme expert, saving Sacred Feather might have been difficult. However, if it were just a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime, there was no need for Jian Chen to worry as much. Of course, he knew that the Dark Star race would definitely be far more complicated than they seemed. How else could they raise the attention of an expert like the heartless child with that much strength? Don't treat the Dark Star race as an easy target. Sure, their strongest expert is only a 9th heavenly layer, but there's almost no one who can save people from them across the Saints' world, said the heartless child. Although Jian Chen was surprised by this, he was not too taken aback. He requested, Senior, please elaborate. The reason is very simple. There's a condition to entering the world of the fallen beast, and that is a limit of 1,000 years old. If people older than that want to enter the world of the fallen beast, they will face attacks from the world. The ancient beast that the world was created from was just too powerful when it was still alive. Even many 9th heavenly layer grand primes would not be its opponent. Even though it's dead now, the world of the fallen beast has perfectly inherited its power. There aren't a lot of people who can endure the attacks in the current Saints' world. Moreover, that is only the first of many dangers. The most terrifying danger comes later. As if it were a taboo topic, the heartless child did not go into too much detail. Anyway, even some 9th heavenly layer grand primes are unwilling to intrude upon the world of the fallen beast. The only way in is by following its rules. 1,000 years, 1,000 years. Just how many people can break through to infinite prime in 1,000 years? As a result, even though the Dark Star Emperor is only a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime, no one aside from Grand Exalts can threaten them given the protection of the rules of that world. Moreover, even if there are supreme prodigies who break through to the primordial realm in 1,000 years, they definitely won't be the Dark Star Emperor's opponent. The Dark Star Emperor is also a supreme prodigy, possessing monstrous talent and an impressive legacy. His battle prowess has already surpassed the 9th heavenly layer of infinite prime, reaching the level of chaotic primes. As a result, ever since the Dark Star race went against the ways and changed their fate, no one who could enter the world of the fallen beast would be the Dark Star Emperor's opponent. Went against the ways and changed their fate? Senior, may I ask what you mean by that? Jian Chen asked in confusion. The heartless child clearly intended to let Jian Chen learn a little more about the Dark Star race, so he did not hold back regarding Jian Chen's questions. This goes back to a very long time ago. A long time ago, the Dark Star race had also been a supreme race in the spirits world. A sovereign had appeared for them during their most glorious times. It was also because of the sovereign that the Dark Star race enjoyed unprecedented prosperity, becoming one of the existences that no one dared to provoke in the spirits world. The heartless child's voice was filled with amazement, as if he felt some admiration towards the strength of the Dark Star race back then. Especially when he mentioned sovereign, undisguised yearning, eagerness, and a hint of fear appeared in his eyes. The so-called sovereign was naturally a grand exalt, as only grand exalts who had comprehended a way to the limit and truly grasped it entirely were worthy of that title. However, no matter how glorious a race is, there will be a day when they decline. Even sovereigns will have a day where they die. Afterwards, the sovereign from the Dark Star race died, and their prosperity came to an end. Without a sovereign, the wood spirits that had always opposed the Dark Star race finally took action. The wood spirits were also a supreme organization in the spirits world. They were not weaker than the Dark Star race when they were at their prime. They also possessed a sovereign, except when the sovereign of the Dark Star race existed, they were equally matched, so there had not been any major conflicts between the two races. No one would have the upper hand once a war broke out. After the sovereign of the Dark Star race died, the wood spirits finally moved against the Dark Star race. They slaughtered all their experts in an unstoppable manner such that the Dark Star race almost became extinct. In the end, a small fraction of the Dark Star race hid in the world of the fallen beast. The world of the fallen beast was actually the handiwork of the sovereign from the Dark Star race. He slayed the ancient beast when he was still alive, refining it into a world and setting up some arrangements inside. He turned it into a place for the Dark Star race to seek refuge. At the same time, he set down the conditions of entry, which is the limit of age. Perhaps due to the arrangements of the sovereign from the Dark Star race, or perhaps the sovereign of the wood spirits was benevolent and did not want to destroy the Dark Star race completely. However, regardless of the reason, he did not lay his hands on the world of the fallen beast in the end. Though, the sovereign of the wood spirits did leave behind a sliver of his will in there. Chapter 2659. Two matters. The will of a sovereign is the laws of the world, a form of order. The sovereign of the wood spirits personally set down laws in the world of the fallen beast. These laws sealed the Dark Star race in there for all of eternity and limited their cultivation so that they could only reach God King at most and never the primordial realm. Regardless of the greatness of their prodigies, they would never be able to break free from this curse. As a result, not a single primordial realm expert appeared among the Dark Star race for a very long time. God King was the end of their cultivation. Clearly, the Dark Star race was unwilling to simply accept this. Over the countless years, they had always been doing everything that they could to break free from the laws set down by the sovereign of the wood spirits. After generations upon generations of effort, they finally managed to make the laws waver. They paid a huge price to chip away a tiny portion, allowing them to break free from the curse that prevented them from reaching the primordial realm. However, they could only break through to infinite prime. The ninth heavenly layer of infinite prime became the final point in their cultivation. Jian Chen finally understood a little with that. At the same time, his knowledge regarding the Dark Star race became clearer. Senior, has the Dark Star race captured Sacred Feather because of the laws set down by the sovereign of the wood spirits? That's right. After so many years of preparation, the Dark Star race is finally ready to act once again. Sacred Feather was captured exactly because of this matter. According to the information I possess, it seems like Sacred Feather's bloodline is rather special. It relates to the chances of success for the Dark Star race in opposing the will of the wood spirit's sovereign and changing their fate. However, it doesn't matter whether they succeed or not. As long as the Dark Star race attempts it, Sacred Feather will surely die, said the heartless child. But Sacred Feather is only at godhood. How can he influence a sovereign's will? Jian Chen asked with a frown. The heartless child laughed. Sacred Feather is only a medium. What really will be opposing the will isn't Sacred Feather, but the power of the world of the fallen beast and a portion of the arrangements left behind by the sovereign of the Dark Star race. However, these two powers aren't under the direct control of the Dark Star race, so they need to employ some special method to direct them into opposing the will. Jian Chen remained silent after listening to the heartless child's explanation. He carefully combed through the information about the Dark Star race and gradually came to a realization. He then asked, that should be the first matter for why Senior is looking for me. May I ask what the second matter is? The heartless child's eyes suddenly shone with a chilling light. He stared right at Jianchen and said gradually, "The second matter is that I want you to stop the Dark Star Race's ceremony. Out of all the prodigies I know throughout the entire Saints world, only you have a chance at completing this task." He was correct. Across the vast Saints world, no one else apart from Jianchen could complete this task. Stopping the ceremony meant opposing the entire Dark Star race or even opposing the Dark Star Emperor. With the Dark Star Emperor's cultivation as a ninth heavenly layer infinite prime and his battle prowess as a supreme prodigy, he was equivalent to a chaotic prime. No other prodigy below the age of 1,000 years could deal with someone like that. A gleam of light shone through Jianchen's eyes. He asked, "Does the Myriad Bone Guild have grievances with the Dark Star race?" "There's no need for you to probe into that. Jianchen, I just want to know whether you're willing to help me out with this." The heartless child was stern. Clearly, he cared about this very much. Jianchen stared at the heartless child sternly and said, "Even if Senior had not saved me earlier, I still would have paid a visit to the Dark Star race just over the matter of Sacred Feather. Since the Dark Star race wants to kill Sacred Feather, I naturally have a grievance with them." The heartless child laughed. He understood what Jianchen was trying to say very well. It did not matter whether he had grievances with the Dark Star race. As long as they wanted to do anything to Sacred Feather, he would never spare them. At the same time, the heartless child was completely confident that if Sacred Feather really died at the hands of the Dark Star race, the entire clan would have to bear Jianchen's devastating wrath. That would be a great disaster for the Dark Star race. The heartless child knew that the current Jianchen might not be able to defeat the Dark Star Emperor. However, once he approached the age limit for entry of 1,000 years, the Dark Star Emperor would never be Jianchen's opponent. As a peak assassination organization in the Saints world, not only did the Myriad Bone Guild possess great strength, but they also possessed an extremely great grasp over information. Ever since Jianchen garnered the heartless child's attention, the Myriad Bone Guild had completely investigated Jianchen. Even though it was impossible for them to find out all his secrets, the Myriad Bone Guild had grasped most of what he went through in the Saints world. That included how he had been saved by the daughter of the patriarch of the Mo clan, Mo Yen, when he first appeared in the Saints world. In such a short amount of time, Jianchen went from being a deity to a level like this. If he is given another 500 years, who knows what level he'll reach. He possesses unprecedented talent. What a pity, thought the heartless child. As if he knew what Jianchen's final fate would be, he felt great regret. "Senior, there's one matter I'm unsure about, so I hope that you could explain," Jianchen said again. Today, he had learned about many matters that he had previously never touched on from the heartless child. The more he knew, the more questions he had as well. "Tell me what it is. As long as I can let you know, I won't hold back at all." Now that the heartless child had fulfilled the reason for his visit, his mood was great. It was as if he would not hide anything from Jianchen as long as his questions did not touch on some secrets. Senior mentioned before that the Wood Spirits and the Dark Star race both had grand exalts. Are there any other grand exalts apart from those two? Jianchen asked. The Spirits world is a large world on the same level as the Saints world after all. They would naturally have more than 2 grand exalts. However, ever since the Spirits world was destroyed, they never gave birth to another grand exalt. Of course, that also has to do with the surviving races who have left the Spirits world, combining into the Spiritsages and settling down in the Saints world. The Saints world isn't their world. They naturally can't comprehend the ways completely and become a grand exalt by cultivating in a foreign world away from their home, said the heartless child. In other words, it's very likely to find undiscovered legacies of grand exalts in the ruins of the Spirits world. Jianchen's eyes twinkled slightly. He was in urgent need of 10 droplets of essence blood from grand exalts to obtain the primeval divine hull. If the ruins of the Spirits world truly possessed remaining legacies of grand exalts, he would not mind scouring the place closely. The heartless child glanced at Jianchen deeply and said, "Don't even think about a grand exalt's legacy. Those aren't things you can find just by looking for them. It depends on luck. Even if you find one, you might not be able to obtain it. Jian Chen smiled resplendently. He did not want the legacies. He wanted the essence blood because he knew it was very unlikely for him to obtain a legacy. He had discovered the location of the ancient Skywolf's legacy in the past, but he only obtained a part of the fortune available. The true legacy belonged to the Wolf clan. Go back and prepare. I'll personally take you to the ruins of the spirit's world tomorrow. However, there's something I need to warn you about. Don't take a single item that has reached the God tier into the world of the fallen beast, including all your God artifacts and God tier pills. After that final warning, the heartless child vanished from before Jian Chen, leaving him sitting alone above the clouds. Chapter 2660. Setting off. I can't bring in any God artifacts or God tier pills? What the heartless child said towards the end made Jian Chen frown. Did that mean he could not even use the 9-star sword of heavenly ways? The 9-star sword of heavenly ways was his only weapon, as well as the sword that suited him the most. Without the sword, his battle prowess would decrease significantly. Jian Chen returned to the Tianyuan clan and began to tidy through everything on him, preparing to enter the world of the fallen beast. He had many God tier pills and various weapons and armor on him. Just the low-quality God artifacts amounted to over 30. Even in terms of medium-quality God artifacts, he possessed 6 apart from the Water Cloud Hull. He also had countless other God tier heavenly resources. He had obtained all of these items from the war this time. They basically all came from dead Grand Primes and Chaotic Primes. Of course, this was not the complete wealth of the Grand Primes. Jian Chen had only obtained a tiny portion. After all, not all of the spoils of war went to him. However, even with that being the case, Jian Chen was wealthy enough to make many Chaotic Primes envious. Even a few Grand Primes would be jealous. I'll leave all these God artifacts, pills, and cultivation resources in the Tianyuan clan. I prepared these for the Tianyuan clan in the first place, so they'll be distributed to the meritorious members of the clan sooner or later. I just don't know what to do with the Fortune Jade. The value of the Fortune Jade is truly immeasurable. After all, only the Inata Grand Exalt possesses a piece this large. I'm probably the second person to have something like this. I don't think it'll be safe to leave something so valuable in the Tianyuan clan. Jian Chen became rather troubled when he thought of the Fortune Jade. It was just too valuable. Once it was exposed, probably even sovereigns of the world would come to fight for it. The only way for him to not worry was to have it by his side. The Inata Grand Exalt possessed a piece of Fortune Jade that was around the same size. He had even witnessed its projection on the 9th floor of the Inata Tower before. It was basically identical in size, except one was round, while the other was rectangular. Moreover, that piece of Fortune Jade was one of the 3 treasures of the Inata Grand Exalt. It stood alongside the heavenly palace of Bisheng in the Inata Tower, which was more than enough to demonstrate its value. It looks like I can only place the Fortune Jade in a normal space ring. Otherwise, I won't be able to take it into the world of the fallen beast with me. Jian Chen sighed gently. The Fortune Jade was so precious, yet it had to be placed in an ordinary space ring. If others heard about this, who knows how many people would puke blood in anger. However, he had no other choice. He could not refine the Fortune Jade, so he was naturally unable to stow it inside his body. However, the Fortune Jade was extremely special. No one could discover its existence with the senses of their souls. It was only visible to the naked eye. As a result, even if he placed it in an ordinary space ring, no one could discover it unless the space ring ended up in the hands of someone else. Of course, the various limitations of the world of the fallen beast were useless to the Fortune Jade. The rules restricted all God artifacts and God tier heavenly resources, but not the Fortune Jade. That was because the Fortune Jade basically surpassed all the God artifacts he knew of so far. It had surpassed the limitations of the world of the fallen beast. It could not be treated as a God artifact. Instead, it had to be viewed as a wondrous treasure produced by the world. It held the power of nature, making it a treasure of fortune. Afterwards, Jianchen entered the water cloud hall. In an open space within the divine hall, the immortal devouring orchid rapidly increased its strength. Several space rings were quietly lying in its surroundings. The space rings naturally held the nourishment Jianchen had prepared for it. Jianchen arrived before the immortal devouring orchid and placed his hand on a huge petal gently. He gave off a mental pulse, communicating with the immortal devouring orchid. I can't take you with me this time. Increase your strength here in peace. I hope that you can give me a great surprise when I return. This was what Jianchen conveyed to the immortal devouring orchid. It was unable to assist him in any shape or form right now, so he did not plan on bringing it with him. However, the immortal devouring orchid had never disappointed him. In the short amount of time he had possessed the orchid, it had grown to infinite prime. It grew so fast that it astounded Jianchen. As a matter of fact, Jianchen even suspected that the immortal devouring orchid would reach chaotic prime faster than him. Afterwards, Jianchen left the water cloud hall and stayed with Shangguan Mu'er. When she learnt that Jianchen was about to go on a journey, she became extremely reluctant to part with him. However, she also knew that Jianchen definitely had something important to attend to, so she did not stop him. Jianchen did nothing else that night. He spent the entire time with Shangguan Mu'er passionately, all the way until the morning. The heartless child arrived at the Tianyuan clan on time the next morning. His arrival meant that Jianchen's time in the Tianyuan clan had formally come to an end. He was about to venture to an extremely distant place. It was so distant that he would leave the saints' world and go to a major world that had once been as prosperous as the saints' world. Afterwards, Jianchen bid farewell to everyone. He handed over a few simple matters regarding the clan's future development to Shiyu before leaving the cloud plain with the heartless child. When he departed, he left almost everything he usually carried around with him in the Tianyuan clan, aside from the fortune jade. He left behind the water cloud hall, only taking an ordinary space ring and a few divine crystals. The water cloud hall became an authoritative symbol of the Tianyuan clan. Under Jianchen's insistence and to prevent future assassination attempts, all the important members of the clan settled down within the divine hall. The water cloud hall became the safest place in the Tianyuan clan. In the vast cosmos, the heartless child personally hurried along with Jianchen. They did not use any teleportation formations. With the heartless child's cultivation level, he was even faster than teleportation formations. He wrapped Jianchen in a thick layer of energy as he seemed to stroll through the stars with his small, short legs at a leisurely pace. However, whenever he took a step, the surrounding landscape would change drastically. It seemed like he was striding through worlds, where he could cross an extremely great distance with each step. Every single step from the heartless child would be equivalent to decades, centuries, or even over a millennia's worth of travel by spatial battleship. Chapter 2661, The Planet Lord's Death. With this speed, it probably won't take long to cross the Saints' world, and you'll be able to go to the 49 Great Plains and 81 planets as you wish. There's no need to waste 5-colored divine crystals on teleportation formations. Envy and anticipation appeared in Jianchen's eyes as he looked at the rapidly changing stars in the surroundings. When he wanted to cross planes in the past, the great price took quite a toll on him, yet the heartless child was currently crossing planes like he was just playing around. Moreover, he was not just crossing planes right now. He was about to cross worlds. I wonder if I can ever attain something like this in my life, thought Jianchen before sighing. He cultivated the chaotic body. This extremely unpopular cultivation method had an issue ever since its creation. No one had been able to overcome it. No one had ever cultivated the chaotic body to great perfection. According to the sword spirits, great perfection of the chaotic body was equivalent to the immortal exalts of the immortals' world, or the grand primes of the saints' world. Let alone that, even if I can actually reach great perfection, it's still nowhere near senior's level of cultivation. Jianshen lowered his head and glanced at the short heartless child beside him. Despite the childlike figure, Jianshen found him insurmountable. He was an existence that Jianshen could only look up to. As Jianshen and the heartless child made their way to the ruins of the spirit's world, a tablet made from dark green jade sat quietly on an altar within the luxurious divine hall atop Venerable Mountain on planet Wando. Around the altar was a swathe of shrunken land. Mountains and rivers intersected on the land. The features were extremely detailed, just like a living world that had been placed there after being shrunken countless times. If someone familiar with planet Wando saw this land, they would definitely recognize it to be planet Wando with a single glance. All the mountains, rivers, and plains aligned with the ones on planet Wando. The land was basically a shrunken planet Wando spread out into a small map. Venerable Mountain stood at the center of it all. The jade tablet just happened to be placed above Venerable Mountain. In such a position, the tablet seemed like it stood above the entire planet, like a supreme existence. Crack. Suddenly, a strange sound rang out in the quiet room. A tiny crack had suddenly appeared on the jade tablet. Its appearance seemed to lead to a chain reaction, where the crack spread in all directions. Within a few seconds, it had covered the entire tablet. In the next moment, the damaged jade tablet finally crumbled completely, falling down as countless fragments. The shattering of the jade tablet seemed to attract the attention of someone outside. The door opened, and a God King attendant walked in, looking around in suspicion. However, when he saw the shattered jade tablet, he was completely stunned. Afterwards, as if he refused to believe his eyes, he rubbed them as hard as he could and looked again. He immediately became sheet white with that. He became incredulous. However, as if he still refused to believe what he saw, he rubbed his eyes and looked again. Now, he seemed to be forced to accept this frightening sight. He immediately felt a chill run down his spine and spread through his body, causing him to feel cold all over. His eyes were filled with fear as his legs trembled. He struggled a little to remain on his feet. Clearly, he was greatly frightened. In the end, he let out a sorrowful wail before running outside like a madman. He called out in a panic, "Oh no! Oh no! Something has happened. Something has happened. The Planet Lord is dead. He is dead." The 5 words, "The Planet Lord is dead," seemed to possess infinite power. Everyone in the Divine Hall heard it clearly, and they all stiffened. Disbelief and shock filled their faces. The news swept through the Divine Hall like a storm, reaching every corner very soon. Afterwards, figures constantly flickered about in the room with the jade tablet. Experts with powerful presences all gathered there. They all stared at the shattered jade tablet as their faces became extremely ugly. Their expressions were warped with deep fright and disbelief. These experts all belonged to the Lord of Planet Wando. As the Lord of a planet, the supreme ruler of a great planet, it was impossible for a planet lord to be alone. The soul tablet has shattered. That means the planet lord is dead. Impossible. The planet lord is the Blue Sky Venerable. The Blue Sky Venerable is a 6th heavenly layer Grand Prime. How did he die? It's impossible for the Blue Sky Venerable to die. With the Venerable's strength, there aren't many people who can kill him in the Saints' world at all. Something must have happened to the soul tablet. The experts discussed with trembling voices. They were filled with fear and a refusal to accept this. The death of the Blue Sky Venerable spread across the entire planet very soon. The various peak organizations and experts were all astounded by the news. After all, as the Lord of Planet Wando, the Blue Sky Venerable was obviously the strongest on the planet. With his cultivation as a 6th heavenly layer Grand Prime, he stood supreme. Yet, even someone as powerful as him had died. This immediately made many organizations on the planet become stricken with fear and filled with worry. They had no idea why the Planet Lord had died and whether he had offended someone outstanding. They were worried that they would be drawn into the matter. Of course, many peak organizations rejoiced as well. The death of the Blue Sky Venerable meant that the position of Planet Lord was now empty. Was this not an opportunity for them? Many peak organizations secretly held emergency meetings on planet Wando. Their ancestors who spent most of their time cultivating all emerged from seclusion, and their impressive members all began to return from their journeys. During this time, people began to move secretly on the planet Wando that had enjoyed several years of peace. The various cultivators on the planet had noticed the sensitivity of the situation as well. They could feel a storm brewing. On the Nine Brilliance Mountain on the Nine Brilliance Plain, the Nine Brilliance Star Lord sat within a secret room. The room was extremely gloomy, but it was filled with specks of twinkling light, providing a tiny amount of radiance for the dark room. There were many specks of light, innumerable and densely packed. They filled the entire secret room such that the secret room seemed like the shrunken cosmos. This was the Nine Brilliant Star Lord's way, the way of stars. The starlight in the room had been condensed from his way. It contained endless profound truths of the world. Chapter 2662, The Six Worlds. After the young Star Lord left the Star Brilliance Plane, the Nine Brilliant Star Lord announced that he would enter secluded cultivation to make a push towards Grand Exalt. However, he was not actually cultivating. Instead, he remained within a secret room and used his tremendous cultivation to observe everything that happened on the cloud plane through his exceptional abilities. He saw how the young Star Lord used the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance's life-bound plume, how the heartless child interfered to save Jian Chen's life, and how the young Star Lord died in the end. He knew everything. As a matter of fact, he even knew that the heartless child had taken Jian Chen from the cloud plane, and they were making their way towards the ruins of the spirit's world. Although he knew all this, the Nine Brilliant Star Lord did nothing. It was not that he did not want to do anything. He dared not to. He had announced that he would be cultivating in seclusion to avoid the entire matter, to distance himself from it and act like he knew nothing. That way, even if his foster son killed Jian Chen, he would have more than enough reason to explain that he was uninvolved when the Inata Grand Exalt returned. He only needed to hand over his foster son to the Inata Grand Exalt. Coupled with his master, the Blood Tier Grand Exalt, he was completely confident about his own safety. His foster son would just be a scapegoat. Although his foster son had died to Jian Chen's hands, the Nine Brilliant Star Lord still dared not do anything to Jian Chen or show himself. He chose to remain in the secret room, following through with his announcement of secluded cultivation. Even if he emerged right now, he really dared not do anything to Jian Chen. However, Jian Chen had killed his foster son after all. He could act completely clueless while in seclusion, but once he showed himself, what was he supposed to do after learning his foster son had been killed? Was he supposed to avenge his foster son to regain his honor or turn a blind eye to the whole matter? He dared not kill Jian Chen even if he were much bolder, as even his master would not be able to protect him if he took such action. However, if he did not kill Jian Chen, what would everyone think of him? He was certain that his prestige would definitely take a hit. He could easily leave behind holes in the entire plot as well. Once the Inata Grand Exalt returned and discovered that he was responsible for the scheme against Jian Chen through the traces left behind, the Nine Brilliant Star Lord would not be able to bear the consequences. Jian Chen was the Inata Grand Exalt's fruit of ways after all. The Inata Grand Exalt's way would be severed with Jian Chen's death. That would lead to an unforgivable grievance. As a result, it would be inconvenient for the Nine Brilliant Star Lord to show himself for quite some time. He even had to cut off his contact from the Star Brilliance Mountain, or it would be very difficult for him to deal with his foster son's murder. Heartless child, how dare you get in my way? I will never forgive you. The Nine Brilliant Star Lord sat within the gloomy secret room. His eyes were extremely cold, and his killing intent was very heavy. He was furious right now, but he had nowhere to vent it. It was a horrible feeling. As a ninth heavenly layer Grand Prime, the Nine Brilliant Star Lord had never felt something so bad before. And the Myriad Bone Guild too. Once I emerge from seclusion, I will definitely make you pay a heavy price. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord ground his teeth as his killing intent surged. He saw how Jian Chen was about to die, how his scheme was about to succeed, but the heartless child's interference rendered it all null. As a result, he completely resented the heartless child and the Myriad Bone Guild. Elsewhere, Jian Chen and the heartless child hurried through outer space. Even though there were many dangers in outer space, none of them were enough to threaten Jian Chen, who had a peak expert like the heartless child by his side. The heartless child simply moved too quickly. In a little over half a day, they had basically crossed through the entire Saint's world, arriving near the edge of the world. This was the boundary of the Saint's world. There was nothing near the boundary. There were no lights, no meteors, nothing as far as the eye could see. It was truly empty. Up ahead is the boundary of the Saint's world. Past the boundary is the Sea of Chaos. The Sea of Chaos separates the 6 worlds, keeping them apart. Apart from Grand Exalts who have completely grasped a way, no one can move through the boundaries as they wish. Even I cannot. I can only move through the tunnel that connects the 2 worlds, said the heartless child. The Sea of Chaos? Jian Chen's eyes immediately lit up when he heard that. He asked, Senior, what kind of place is this Sea of Chaos you just mentioned? Is there chaotic force there? And the 6 worlds as well. What are the other worlds apart from the Spirit's world and the Saint's world? Jian Chen was extremely curious. So far, the only major worlds he knew about were the Spirit's world, Saint's world, Immortal's world, and Demon's world. He had no idea about the other 2. He only mentioned the Saint's world and the Spirit's world to reduce suspicion. The heartless child looked at Jian Chen deeply and said, I know you cultivate the chaotic body. Although I have no idea where you got this cultivation method from, it's an extremely unpopular method in the Saint's world. There aren't a lot of people who take that path in cultivation, as not only is it almost impossible to reach the highest level of cultivation, the resources required are extremely astounding as well. Apart from a few Archean clans in the Saint's world, there's basically no large organization that will expend so much resources to raise someone with the chaotic body. Jian Chen was not surprised at all. He had heard a long time ago that the Immortal's world was not the only place with the chaotic body. There were also people in the Saint's world who cultivated it, except they were extremely rare in both worlds. It was very difficult to find someone who practiced it. Apart from the Spirit's world and the Saint's world, the 4 other worlds are the God's world, Immortal's world, Demon's world, and Demon's world. Although there are 6 worlds, only our Saint's world and the Immortal's world remain intact. The God's world crumbled before the Spirit's world. The God clan that currently inhabits the Godnigma plane are actually descendants from that world. The Spiritsages are the descendants from the Spirit's world. As a result, the Saint's world basically has the forces of the Spirit's world and God's world gathered in it. In other words, the 3 worlds stand on the same line. As for the Demon's world and Demon's world, they are with the Immortal's world, opposing our Saint's world. However, the Demon's world suffered the same fate as the Spirit's world and the God's world. It also crumbled. All the members of the Demon's world migrated to the Saint's world, forming the 4 peak races of the Immortal's world. As for the Demon's world, it's half destroyed. The ways of the world are damaged, and the laws are in decline. It has become more and more difficult for people in the Demon's world to cultivate, so their overall power is nowhere close to our Saint's world or the Immortal's world. The Demon's world will probably face the same fate as the Spirit's world in the near future. As a result, our Saint's world and the Immortal's world are the only major worlds still fully intact. Jian Chen felt an emotional upheaval, not because of the God's world and Demon's world, but because he had never thought that the God clan where Tai Ta resided would come from the God's world. With Tai Ta's bloodline as a warring god, he had become the supreme king of the God clan. Jian Chen truly struggled to imagine just what kind of role Tai Ta's bloodline of the warring gods played during an age when the God's world was fully intact. Jian Chen was unable to contain his curiosity, so he asked this exact question. Even the destruction of the Spirit's world doesn't belong to this aeon, while the God's world fell apart before it. It's just far too distant in the past. Even the ancient records don't go into much detail, so I can't answer your question. Probably even the descendants of the god's world, the god clan, can't answer this question for you, said the heartless child. Chapter 2663. The Jiang family in Fangjing. As they spoke, who knows how far the heartless child had crossed near the boundary of the saint's world. In the end, he and Jianchen appeared before a tunnel shining with multicolored light. Jianchen subconsciously looked around as soon as he arrived. He ignored the colorful tunnel. Countless spaceships of various sizes and shapes were parked in the surrounding space. All of them had deactivated their protective formations, remaining there quietly without any defenses at all. They were all like ghosts. Groups of soldiers in uniform armor constantly moved from spaceship to spaceship. It was as if they were holding some sort of inspection. There were naturally many primordial realm experts keeping guard, but when they faced these soldiers who were merely at godhood, none of them dared to resist. None of them dared to block the soldiers either. Only the spaceships that had been inspected would activate their protective formations again and slowly pass through the tunnel up ahead. These should be the people waiting to enter the ruins of the spirit's world. I never thought there would be so many of them. Jianchen was amazed as he looked at all the spaceships in the surroundings. This is the only tunnel to the spirit's world, well, the only tunnel for those below Grand Exalt, explained the heartless child. Jianchen nodded understandingly. Then he asked the heartless child a little more about the Sea of Chaos. However, the heartless child clearly was unwilling to go into detail. He just warned Jianchen to not be tempted by it, and that was all. Sister Shuelian, the two people up ahead aren't actually in spaceships. They must be the backgroundless people that the elder spoke of. They're so pitiful. They don't even have a place to stop and rest. They can only stay in the terrifying outer space without the protection of any formations, in constant danger. The crisp voice of a woman rang out from behind. Several dozen kilometers behind Jianchen, a few women stood on a spaceship several tens of thousand meters long. The youngest only seemed to be 17 or 18, while the oldest was an old woman who seemed like she was in her 70s. The person who spoke was the youngest one. It seemed like she rarely ever ventured outside, so she did not have much experience with the outside world. She felt extremely curious about everything she came across and found them to be novel. Her bright eyes were slightly naive. Jiang Ro, watch your mouth. Those who don't ride spaceships aren't necessarily weak, backgroundless cultivators. It's possible for them to be extremely powerful experts who don't even need spaceships. Be quiet here, just in case you cause any unnecessary trouble. Our Jiang family is very powerful, but there are plenty of existences in the saint's world far greater than our Jiang family, a young lady beside Jian Ro said carefully. She seemed to be in her 20s, mature and prudent. Her facial features were refined. Cold light would flicker through her eyes from time to time as she occasionally gave off killing intent. Of course, this killing intent was not directed towards any particular person. Instead, it had naturally formed from what she had gone through in life. It was evident that she was a vicious person. All right, I understand, Sister Shuelian, Jiang Ro said without caring too much. She grew up within the Jiang family, which allowed her to understand just how powerful the clan was. At the very least, all outsiders she saw in the past hundreds of years would show deep respect and fear towards the clan. Although she knew that there were many existences far greater than the Jiang family in the saint's world, it would not be easy to come across them. Lower the spaceship and immediately back up 1,000 kilometers. It was also at this moment that an old woman on the deck spoke out. She looked at the heartless child sternly. Granny, what's wrong? We're all good and fine, so why do we have to back up? If we back up 1,000 kilometers, that will mean remaining in line for so many more days, Jiang Ro asked in confusion. The old woman was a chaotic prime, the person who held the most status on the spaceship. After she spoke, the spaceship immediately began to move backwards. I actually failed to sense when those two people arrived here. They appeared without any traces at all. Anyone who can achieve that is not someone we can provoke. The old woman dared not speak aloud. Instead, she conveyed her message to the people around her secretly. She even enveloped Jiang Ro in a barrier of energy, preventing her voice from being heard by others. Clearly, she was extremely cautious. Jiang Ro immediately shut up. She blinked her rather naive eyes and curiously studied Jian Chan and the heartless child who grew further and further away. At this moment, another woman in white emerged from the cabin on the Jiang family spaceship. She seemed to be in her 20s. Even though she did not possess an alluring beauty, she was still rather flawless. However, her face was rather cold. She seemed aloof. Her cold eyes would shine with a chilling light from time to time, making her unapproachable. Sister Fang Jing, why have you come out as well? Jiang Ro beamed when she saw the woman in white and immediately ran over. At that moment, everyone on the deck looked towards the woman called Fang Jing, including the chaotic prime old woman. Many of them showed respect. Fang Jing did not belong to the Jiang family. Instead, she was their savior. Their spaceship had encountered a large-scale attack from space beasts. Just when they were in the middle of danger, Fang Jing had suddenly saved them. She even assisted the great elder of their Jiang family to kill the chaotic prime space beast. That was how they managed to survive. As a result, Fang Jing gained the respect of everyone on the spaceship. At the same time, Fang Jing also happened to be making her way to the ruins of the spirit's world, so she joined the people of the Jiang family. Yeah, I've come out to take a look, Fang Jing said indifferently. She was emotionless, without a single trace of a smile. The only impression the people of the Jiang family received from her was her cold bearing. However, the people of the clan did not care about that at all because they had all witnessed Fang Jing's strength. Lady Fang, the old woman on the deck, who was also the great elder of the Jiang family, greeted Fang Jing amicably. Fang Jing only responded with a nod. She remained cold and aloof, as if chaotic primes were nothing in her eyes. She arrived at the bow of the spaceship and glanced ahead casually. She saw Jian Chen and the heartless child. However, when she saw Jian Chen's back, his familiar figure was like a sharp blade that ripped a hole in the memories she had sealed up. Fang Jing's eyes immediately narrowed. She instantly recalled Jian Chen. Chapter 2664, The Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy. It's actually him, Jian Chen. Why is he here as well? Fang Jing thought. As soon as she thought about how Jian Chen had once saved her before she regained her memories, her feelings became rather mixed. However, that was it. After all, she was no longer that pitiful young girl called Fang Jinger anymore. She had regained her memories and returned to her true self. She was the elder princess of the heavenly palace of great radiance, Fang Jing. As a result, even when she saw her past savior, Fang Jing's feelings did not fluctuate much at all. Jian Chen is actually with the heartless child of the Myriad Bone Guild. Afterwards, Fang Jing looked at the heartless child who stood beside Jian Chen. She was not unfamiliar with him, so she recognized him at first glance. A sliver of coldness immediately flashed through her frigid eyes, but it vanished very soon. I hope that Lady Fang can look after the juniors of our Jiang family a little when they go to the ruins of the spirit's world for training, the great elder of the Jiang family said to Fang Jing extremely politely. She did not act like her cultivation as a chaotic prime was a big deal at all. Even though Fang Jing's cultivation was lower than hers, the terrifying battle prowess that Fang Jing had displayed in the battle against the chaotic prime space beast had astounded her. She could even say that without Fang Jing's assistance, it would have been impossible for her to kill the space beast. Heartless child, you've actually come to my place personally. You don't come often enough. Welcome. At this moment, a heavy voice exploded in outer space. It was even more tremendous than thunder, booming through the entire region. The terrifying sound waves expanded as ripples, shaking up all the spaceships in the area. All the cultivators in the spaceships were shocked. The loudness was just too terrifying. If the owner of the voice had not controlled it on purpose, probably just the terrifying voice would have been enough to reduce most of the spaceships to dust. Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy, it's the Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy. The Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy who guards the tunnel between the two worlds has actually appeared in person. That's the Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy's voice. Heavens, someone like the Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy has actually appeared personally. Who is this heartless child? Why have I never heard of him? He's actually enough for the Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy to show himself. I've always heard from the ancestor that the passageway between the two worlds is guarded by an exceptional expert all year long. Is the speaker the person that the ancestor mentioned? The tranquil space became filled with soft murmurs from the various spaceships when the voice suddenly boomed out. It was not just the spaceships. Even the soldiers stationed there that inspected each spaceship all stopped what they were doing. They showed admiration and reverence. 1,000 kilometers behind Jian Chen, Fang Jing's gaze deepened. She stared at the space in front of the heartless child. A burly, middle-aged man appeared where she was looking. He was extremely large, like a small giant. He stood at 5 meters tall. He was wearing just a pair of small shorts and was bare-chested. His large, dense, and chiseled muscles seemed to be filled with explosive power. It was quite the sight. Jian Chen could sense vital energy that was suffocatingly terrifying from his body. The vital energy was so powerful that the only thing in Jian Chen's memory that surpassed it was Gusta's fleshly core. What tremendous vital energy! Not only is the Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy's cultivation outstanding, even the toughness of his body has reached a shocking level, thought Jian Chen. Heartless child, it has been hundreds of thousands of years since we last saw each other. Have you come to such a distant place to go to the ruins of the spirit's world, said the Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy. His voice was extremely loud, basically like thunder. It was deafening. Clearly, the heartless child and Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy had known each other for many years. They stood before each other and conversed as equals. Although their statures differed drastically, that did not affect how they treated each other. I'm escorting a junior to the spirit's world. The heartless child stated his intentions after a simple greeting. A sliver of surprise appeared in the Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy's eyes. He could not help but study Jian Chen carefully. Even worthy enough to be personally escorted by you, the heartless child. It looks like the visit this time to the spirit's world is extremely important to you. The heartless child simply smiled. He did not try to go into detail. Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy, I happen to be in a hurry, so please clear out the tunnel. That's no issue. Since you're in a hurry, I'll let you through first. If you have the time, don't forget to come find this saint. We can discuss our comprehensions. The Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy agreed straightforwardly. With a single order, several infinite primes immediately appeared. With the assistance of the various godhood guards, they stopped all the spaceships that were about to enter the colorful tunnel. Behind every single spaceship was a powerful peak organization. However, when they were stopped, no one voiced a word of objection, as the primordial realm experts in all the spaceships seemed to understand the strength and terror of the Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy extremely well. Even though only a handful of them had ever seen the Sacred Lord of Guarding Energy, they had all been warned by their ancestors. Very soon, the colorful spatial tunnel was completely cleared out. All the spaceships that were about to enter it waited outside. The heartless child did not hesitate. He took a step and immediately vanished, having entered the colorful passageway with Jian Chen. With his entry, the peaceful tunnel immediately began to shake. The colorful light in there flickered about. Clearly, the tunnel had reached its limit. Everyone on the spaceship from the Jiang family silently watched the heartless child and Jian Chen vanish. As for Jiang Ro, who had mistaken Jian Chen and the heartless child to be backgroundless, her mouth now hung agape. Her naive little face was filled with disbelief and shock. How did we just meet two people with such great origins? Are there really so many supreme experts in the saints' world? Jiang Ro thought to herself. She was extremely astounded. However, Fang Jing just stared at the spatial tunnel silently. The light in her eyes flickered. Who knows what she was thinking? Chapter 2665, A Ruined World. The spatial tunnel appeared to be a huge, colorful gate from the outside, but it seemed like a long corridor inside. However, there was no peace inside the corridor. Time distorted as space collided and folded. Violent energy ran amok as well. The entire spatial tunnel seemed like the surging seas, without a single inch of peace. Moreover, the energy there was so chaotic that it could not be absorbed. Apart from the laws of space and the laws of time, there were no other laws present. Hence, regardless of how powerful a cultivator was, only those who had comprehended the laws of space or the laws of time would be able to use their power of laws in the tunnel. Even grand primes were not an exception. Anyone within the tunnel could only use the power of their cultivation. After the heartless child entered the tunnel, he did not use even a single sliver of his power of laws anymore. The power of his supreme cultivation erupted from his body, forming a powerful barrier of light around him. Jian Shen was naturally protected as well. As a result, the spatial tunnel that should have been perilous to various primordial realm experts and spaceships, requiring the utmost caution, was suppressed by the heartless child's cultivation. It became as simple as a stroll for them to move through it. They moved extremely quickly as well, basically rushing through the entire place like a comet. They overtook the spaceships that moved carefully through the tunnel as they smashed through all the streams of energy there. What a powerful cultivation and what great speed. Who is this person? Even mid-grand primes would never dare to move through here like that. Who in the world is he? How is his cultivation so terrifying? Gasps and sighs rang out from the spaceships that the heartless child overtook. The experts who witnessed this all were shocked. It was impossible to sense the flow of time inside the spatial tunnel, so after who knows how long, Jian Shen and the heartless child finally emerged, arriving in a region of pitch-black space. The space was barren. There was no starlight at all. Only a colorful spatial tunnel hung there quietly, as well as many spaceships parked nearby. It seemed exactly the same as the Saint's world. There was nothing different as far as the eye could see. However, Jian Shen could clearly sense the difference. The most obvious differences were the energy of the world and the laws of the world. The energy of the world in the space here clearly differed from the Saint's world. A person from the Saint's world probably could not absorb the energy of the world here to cultivate. Even if they could, it would definitely be an arduous task. As for the laws of the world, they felt like they were in ruins. The 3,000 laws were incomplete. Even the laws that did exist felt like someone had severed them with a knife. They were not whole. In short, it was basically impossible to achieve much at all when cultivating under such conditions. The incomplete laws made it dozens of times or even over 100 times more difficult for cultivators of this world to comprehend. There were even some laws that could not be comprehended. Is this the spirit's world? Jian Shen studied the surroundings as he thought to himself. The heartless child studied the world with a frown before handing a jade slip to Jian Shen. He said, "I'll just leave you here. The entrance to the world of the fallen beast isn't far. It won't take long for you to get there with your speed. This is the precise location of the world of the fallen beast." The heartless child seemed to dislike this place very much. After handing over that, he turned around and left, returning to the spatial tunnel to go back to the Saint's world. Jian Shen was in no hurry to leave after the heartless child's departure. Instead, he picked up the jade slip from the heartless child and studied it carefully. At this moment, a spaceship shot out from the spatial tunnel behind him. Just when the spaceship was about to accelerate, it suddenly stopped. An old man with gray hair flew out from the spaceship and arrived before Jian Shen with a smile. "I am Anlu Dafu from the Anlu clan of the Westlan Plain." "Greetings," the old man clasped his fist at Jian Shen and said extremely politely. Jian Shen stowed away the jade slip from the heartless child. He looked at the old man. The old man did not hide his presence, so Jian Shen immediately sensed his cultivation. He was a chaotic prime and not much weaker than Su Ran. He was at the third heavenly layer. I am Changyang Shengtian. Greetings, senior. Jian Chen clearly returned his politeness, responding with a clasped fist as well. So it's Changyang Shengtian. It's a pleasure to meet you. I was wondering if you have time to spare. I would like to invite you to our spaceship, said An Dafu. Jian Chen immediately understood. An Dafu clearly saw the heartless child move through the spatial tunnel with him, so he misunderstood him as someone with the backing of an extremely powerful expert. As such, he wanted to rope him in. Due to the special circumstances of the spatial tunnel, the heartless child was unable to cross through it in an instant. He had overtaken many spaceships along the way, so he obviously attracted all of their attention. Jian Chen was worried about Sacred Feather's safety, so he only wanted to arrive at the world of the fallen beast sooner. He obviously was in no mood to waste time here, so he declined politely. At the same time, a few more spaceships emerged from the spatial tunnel. When the experts on them discovered Jian Chen, they all flew out from their spaceships like An Dafu to greet Jian Chen. They were all extremely friendly and were ready to curry up to Jian Chen. Even if they could not rope him in, they wanted to get to know him. After all, they had all witnessed the heartless child's strength. Even though they were nowhere close to seeing through the heartless child's cultivation, just the tremendous pressure from him and how he moved through the spatial tunnel fearlessly was enough to let them understand that he had surpassed their ancestors. They obviously did not want to give up on even the slightest chance to befriend someone like that. If they managed to establish something between them, they would have achieved something major. It would hold great significance for their clans. Jian Chen understood that the more time he wasted, the more trouble he would be in when the spaceships behind emerged. As a result, he turned them all down and left without any hesitation. The jade slip from the heartless child clearly depicted the direction and path. It went into great detail, describing the most effortless way to travel and the safest path to take. As a result, it was quite difficult for Jian Chen to get lost here. Chapter 2666, A Message from the Protector Swords. Jian Chen used the laws of space to cover ground in outer space. He moved like the heartless child, where every single step he took touched on the profound truths of the universe, allowing him to teleport. Who knows how far he could cross in an instant? Due to being too great of a world, it was impossible for people to teleport like they did in lower worlds in the Saints' world without exceptional cultivation or extremely great comprehension of the laws of space. After Jian Chen's comprehension of the laws of space reached infinite prime, he was finally able to achieve this. However, even with that being the case, the distance he could teleport each time was extremely limited. It was unlike the Tianyuan continent, where Saint Kings could rip open space gates and go wherever they wanted. The space in the spirit's world is rather different from the saint's world. Perhaps due to the incomplete laws of space here, I always feel like it's rather arduous to use the laws of space here. It's not as easy as back in the saint's world. Jian Chen stopped very quickly. He studied the space there with his brows furrowed, and then he silently sensed the power of his soul. His eyebrows became even more furrowed. When I use the laws, the power of my soul is drained faster, and the recovery speed is less than a third of the speed in the saint's world. I can't keep using the laws of space to cover ground. It looks like whatever I do in this place, I need to save energy, thought Jian Chen. No wonder the heartless child had turned around and left as soon as he arrived here. The environment was so terrible that even an expert like the heartless child would be affected. Jian Chen gave up on using the laws of space to cover ground. With a thought, chaotic force began to circulate in his body rapidly, allowing him to travel quickly using his cultivation alone. Chaotic force grew at an extremely gradual rate because it was just too powerful. A tremendous amount of energy was required to condense every strand, so the energy in each strand was obviously immense. As a result, his chaotic force depleted extremely slowly as well. In this foreign land, other cultivators would probably conserve the power of their cultivation due to the difficulty of absorbing origin energy here, but Jian Chen had no need to worry about that at all. His chaotic Niden contained an almost endless amount of energy. It was enough for him to do whatever he wanted in this foreign and incomplete world. At the same time, there was a certain region within the saint's world filled with floating, shattered meteors. They varied in size and basically packed the entire place. The fragments of meteor did not directly disintegrate when struck by violent pulses of energy. Instead, they shot off like comets into the depths of the sea of stars, propelled by the powerful energy. At the very center of this space was an extremely large, almost planet-like space beast. The pressure it gave off made the space there tremble and distort. It was extremely terrifying and powerful. The vital energy it possessed was earth-shaking. An elephant-shaped space beast constantly raised its foot and stamped down at a ball of white light that seemed even smaller than an ant in comparison. The ball of white light was Gong Sunji, who had been sent there by the rain abbess through her laws of space. He had already become sheet white, and his eyes were filled with despair. There was a sense of dread towards death. He had been trapped there by the space beast through extremely great energy, forcing him to endure this terrifying attack at all times. As the protective light from Godslayer's sword was rapidly drained away, it clearly became thinner and thinner. This made Gong Sunji feel the same powerlessness as when he faced the Rain Abyss. Although he was protected by the Protector Sword, making him temporarily safe, the Protector Sword's energy would eventually run out. He could only watch the light around him grow thinner and thinner. He could not do anything else. He could only wait for death quietly. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I only just got the position of leader of the Radiant Saint Hall. I've yet to enjoy the wealth and status properly. I've yet to conquer the entire desolate plain and become a supreme figure on there. I can't die here, Gong Sunji's voice trembled. The fear of death filled his heart, making his legs shake. He could vaguely sense that the space beast was even more terrifying than the Rain Abyss. The Rain Abyss had used her mastery over the laws of space to send Gong Sunji here with great precision. This was clearly no coincidence. The Rain Abyss knew that this would happen. At the same time, Godslayer's sword let out a thrum. It was gentle, but it was enough to even reach the depths of hell. It seemed to be sobbing, not because it was not powerful enough, but because its wielder was too weak, unable to unleash its power. It could only defend reactively against the space beast. Within the Radiant Saint Hall on the desolate plain, one of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall, Xian Zhan, current sat within a secret room as he cultivated. The laws of the hallowed gathered around him like a web, revolving around him with the profound truths of the world. He clearly was making the final preparations for the most crucial step to breaking through. Once he broke through successfully and reached Grand Prime, he would be able to unleash even greater power from his Protector Sword. Suddenly, Xian Zhan stopped. He opened his eyes, and a gleam of light flashed through them. He closed his hand, and a large sword immediately appeared in his hand. The sword was surrounded by a brilliant light such that only an outline would be visible from time to time. This was the 9th Protector's sword, Mindwaker's sword. The Protector Sword sent a message. Gong Sunji is in danger, and it actually wants me to go save him, Xian Zhan murmured before leaving the secret room. At the same time, Xian Ming, who cultivated in another room within the sacred hall, and Han Xian and Biyao on the soaring cloud's peak roused from cultivation. They drew their Protector Swords immediately and sensed the message from the sword. Gong Sunji is in danger, and it actually wants us to save him. I'll never go. I hate him the most. It's best if he dies. Biyao stamped her foot and pouted. She was completely reluctant. She felt disgusted as soon as she thought of Gong Sunji's face and actions. She even hoped that Gong Sunji would die sooner. Biyao, let's go. Get ready to set off. This is the will of the Protector Swords. We cannot defy them. Han Xian flew down from the top of the mountain and appeared before Biyao. His appearance had not changed at all from before, but his bearing was different. He seemed like a completely different person. Not only did it become even more steady, it was even filled with a great sense of confidence. This was what the protector sword had brought. To them, the protector swords represented great strength. With great strength and a unique status in the Radiant Saint Hall, Han Xian's confidence would obviously differ from before. But, Biyao remained reluctant, but she understood that since the protector sword had brought this message, she had no other choice even if she did not want to. If she did not abide by the protector sword's will, it was extremely likely for the protector sword to leave her. Chapter 2667, Condescension. After all, they were only wielders of the protector swords. They were not their masters. The protector swords could leave them at any time, with that being the case. Of course, it was extremely unlikely for the protector swords to give them messages. Only when other wielders were under threat or the other protector swords were in danger would they give a warning. If that bastard Gongsun died, the Radiant Saint Hall would gain quite a lot of peace. Why do the protector swords want us to save him? Donglin Yanxue also felt extremely vexed. Currently, she was within the Donglin clan. She clearly loathed Gongsun the most, yet she was told to save him. It made her very conflicted. In the end, the 5 protectors gathered together. They all followed the directions of their protector swords and arrived in the space where Gongsun was trapped. Gongsun was in an exceedingly distant region of space. They had to cross over a dozen planes with teleportation formations first before crossing who knows how great of a distance using the power of the protector swords. Only then did they arrive. This was the first time the 6 protector swords had gathered in outer space, somewhere beyond the desolate plain. However, when they saw the colossal space beast, everyone was shocked aside from Xianzhan. This was the first time the 4 of them had ever seen such a gigantic space beast. Naturally, they could not avoid a startling battle. With their arrival, Gongsun was saved as well. Fantastic. Vice Leader Xianzhan, you've finally come to support me. I've already been locked in combat against this space beast for many days. It's running out of strength. Quick, let's work together and kill it. Gongsun laughed aloud. Their arrival made him relax completely. Different to his prior despair, he was now in high spirit, his confidence swelled. He knew that he would not die to the foot of the terrifying space beast with their arrival. Afterwards, Gongsun went from defending reactively to attacking proactively. He worked with Xianzhan and the others to fight the space beast. The 6 protector swords of the Radiant Saint Hall all shone brightly, illuminating the dark space there. They became embroiled in an astonishing battle. However, the space beast was just too powerful. Moreover, the toughness of its body was almost unmatched. After a few clashes, they discovered to their shock that aside from Xianzhan, none of them could harm the space beast at all. Even Xianzhan could only inflict some mild injuries to the space beast. However, the attack from the space beast would launch them far away every time. Even with the protection of the protector swords, it was a terrible feeling. Let's retreat. There's nothing we can do about it, said Xianzhan. Are we just going to let it go like this? Gongsun felt aggrieved. He had been harassed by the space beast for such a long time, where his life had almost been in danger. He had finally found an opportunity for revenge, only to discover there was nothing he could do about it. This matter filled him with resentment. Xianzhan stared at Gongsun emotionlessly and said, "If you want revenge, you can stay behind yourself. We won't be accompanying you." As Gongsun had forced Yu Chen to step down, making him leave the Radiant Saint Hall, Xianzhan did not have any good impression of Gongsun at all. His words were without mercy, taking no regard of Gongsun identity as the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall. Indeed, there was nothing Gongsun could do to Xianzhan. At the very least, he did not have the confidence to stand up to Xianzhan now that he faced the threat of the space beast. As a result, he could only snort coldly inside. He shot a glance at the space beast that had caused him great distress reluctantly before turning around and leaving. In the end, Xianzhan covered for them, and they left successfully. Almost as soon as Gong Sunji returned to the Radiant Saint Hall, Huang Fugi of the Midheaven clan and Su Jiping of the Su family went to find him. They hoped for Gong Sunji to fulfill his end of the deal sooner, allowing a junior from their respective clans to inherit a protector sword. Both of them had dragged themselves over with heavily injured bodies. They had suffered bad wounds in the battle against the Martial Soul lineage and the Rain Abyss. It would be almost impossible for them to recover in a short amount of time. However, they did not care about their wounds at all. They only thought about the protector swords of the Radiant Saint Hall. They wanted the protector swords to end up in the hands of their juniors sooner so that they could consolidate their clan's strength and status. The Martial Soul lineage hasn't been destroyed. Not a single one of them died, as a matter of fact. The method of the exalted saint I want hasn't been retrieved from Jianchen either. You failed to achieve anything from the visit to the Cloud Plain, yet you still have the face to ask me for protector swords? Piss off, both of you, piss off. As soon as he returned to the Radiant Saint Hall, Gong Sunji's arrogance swelled once more. The presence of the protectors had given him the confidence to look down on all. Coupled with how furious he felt, he immediately began to curse Huang Fugi and Su Jiping. He did not care about their dignity at all. Su Jiping and Huang Fugi were rather dumbstruck when Gong Sunji cursed them. They were mighty fourth heavenly layer grand primes, worthy of such respect on the desolate plain. They could affect the entire plain with a wave of their hand, yet they had now been cursed by Gong Sunji, who never took them seriously. Perhaps this was the first time something like this had happened within the countless years they had been cultivating. However, Su Jiping and Huang Fugi returned to their senses very soon. Their faces were completely sunken as an indetectable sliver of viciousness flashed through the depths of their eyes. Clearly, they had been completely infuriated. However, they showed none of it. On the current desolate plain, their Midheaven clan and Su family were the closest to Gong Sunji. It had been very difficult for them to establish this relationship. Before they obtained the protector swords, they did not wish to fall out with Gong Sunji. Let's just endure it for now. Do it for the sake of the bigger picture. He won't be able to last very long with how arrogant he is. Once the protector sword abandons him, he'll only be an ant. Huang Fugi said to Su Jiping secretly. It's infuriating. Gong Sunji is just too conceited. He's far too condescending. Once the protector swords end up in the hands of our clans, we'll form an alliance with Xianzhan immediately and show Gong Sunji what's what, Su Jiping replied secretly as well. He was fuming. Gong Sunji's merciless words had infringed on Su Jiping and Huang Fugi's dignity. Although they were furious, neither Su Jiping nor Huang Fugi openly retorted Gong Sunji. You can't blame us for this. You witnessed the Rain Abyss strength as well. She wanted to protect the Martial Soul lineage, so there's nothing we can do either. Moreover, even Sha Yun died because of that, said Huang Fugi. Su Jiping snorted coldly. You need to find a way to deal with the Rain Abyss if you want to destroy the Martial Soul lineage. With the Rain Abyss strength, probably only the Celestial Sword Saint can match her on the desolate plain. If you have the ability, go get the Celestial Sword Saint to take part. Chapter 2668, Unworthy, the Celestial Sword Saint. Gong Sunji's eyes suddenly lit up when they mentioned that name. He did not know the Celestial Sword Saint's cultivation, but the Celestial Sword Saint was the undisputed greatest cultivator on the desolate plain. He cultivated reclusively in the Sword God Mountains all year round, never paying attention to the matters around him, nor interfering in any of them. He was an extremely aloof figure. Su Jiping's words were seemingly enlightening. It allowed countless thoughts to flood Gong Sunji's head in an instant, giving him an idea immediately. The Celestial Sword Saint holds a very great status, but I am no longer the mere God King from the past. I am a Grand Exalt's descendant. The blood of a Grand Exalt courses through my veins. I'm also the master of the greatest protector sword, Godslayer's sword, as well as the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall. The Celestial Sword Saint will definitely treat me with importance given that, thought Gong Sunji. It opened his mind to many new ideas. The morning of the next day, Gong Sunji prepared a few lavish gifts and created quite a scene by visiting the Celestial Sword Saint with the vice leaders and some elders of the Radiant Saint Hall loyal to him. He managed to meet the Celestial Sword Saint as he wished. The Celestial Sword Saint currently sat on the edge of a cliff at the top of the Sword God Mountains like an old, meditating monk. He did not give off any presence at all. As he sat there with his straight back, he seemed like a normal, healthy, old man. Gong Sunji was rather excited as he stood behind the Celestial Sword Saint. In the past, the Celestial Sword Saint had always been a figure of legends to him. Not only did he seem insurmountable, but even just catching a glimpse of him was a dream for Gong Sunji. Now, he was so close to the Celestial Sword Saint. A legend was presented right before him like this, so it was difficult for him to not become emotional. The Celestial Sword Saint spoke first. He said completely calmly and emotionlessly, "Gong Sunji, I know why you've come. You want me to deal with the Rain Abbess of the Delight Plain. Senior Sword Saint really does have divine foresight, never leaving the Sword God Mountains but knowing everything that happens in the world. Senior's level of cultivation is truly admirable." Gong Sunji expressed his admiration from the bottom of his heart. He was arrogant, but he still felt admiration towards the Celestial Sword Saint from the bottom of his heart. Not only was the Celestial Sword Saint the undisputed greatest expert of the Desolate Plain, but his prestige on the plain had reached an unmatched level as well. He was supreme. In other words, all cultivators on the Desolate Plain who knew the Celestial Sword Saint would revere him. "I cannot assist you in that. I must tell you that the Rain Abbess is much stronger than you have imagined her to be. It's best if your Radiant Saint Hall does not provoke her," the Celestial Sword Saint continued. He seemed to know everything, refusing Gong Sunji's request before he could even mention it. Gong Sunji was stunned. He had never thought that the Celestial Sword Saint would turn him down before he could even mention the matter. Moreover, he declined in such an absolute fashion, leaving no room for negotiation. Gong Sunji became rather speechless at that moment. All the methods of insistence he had prepared beforehand had been rendered useless by the Celestial Sword Saint's simple reply. Only after quite a daze did Gong Sunji force out, "Celestial Sword Saint, are you afraid of the Rain Abbess? I've only told you that because of Godslayer's sword in your hands. You will gain no benefits from offending the Rain Abbess of the Delight Plain. That's all I have to say. Take care." The Celestial Sword Saint did not waver at all. He remained seated there like an unmoving rock. Only his old voice boomed out. He did not even glance at Gong Sunji, as if he did not take Gong Sunji seriously at all. It was like he had only seen Gong Sunji because of Godslayer's sword. The Celestial Sword Saint's straightforward reply became offending in Gong Sunji's ears. He felt like he was being belittled. Who was Gong Sunji? He was the mighty descendant of a Grand Exalt, the youngest leader in the Radiant Saint Hall's history, and the wielder of the greatest protector sword, Godslayer's sword. All of these aspects made Gong Sunji extremely confident and arrogant. He would not allow anyone to belittle him. He respected the Celestial Sword Saint very much, but the Celestial Sword Saint's words had infuriated him. "Celestial Sword Saint, I respect you because you are my senior. However, don't take it too far. You may be scared of the Rain Abbess, but I'm not. Godslayer's sword may not be able to take the Rain Abbess' life, but I refuse to believe that I can't deal with the Rain Abbess if there's the Tower of Radiance as well. Don't forget, I am the Grand Exalt's descendant. The Tower of Radiance came from my ancestor, so I am the only one who can inherit it. The Tower of Radiance will accept me as its master sooner or later." As if someone had stepped on Gong Sunji's toes, he snarled at the Celestial Sword Saint furiously. "No, you're wrong. You won't obtain the Tower of Radiance," said the Celestial Sword Saint. "What? Did you just say that I won't obtain the Tower of Radiance?" "Ha ha 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 ha." Gong Sunji laughed out of anger. He boasted shamelessly, "Across the world, no one is more worthy of obtaining my ancestor's Tower of Radiance than me. The Tower of Radiance is no ordinary god artifact, nor is it like the protector swords of your Radiant Saint Hall. It is a supreme treasure personally forged by a Grand Exalt. You must fulfill some natural conditions to gain its recognition. Unfortunately, you have not, which is why there is no chance for you to become its master, said the Celestial Sword Saint. Celestial Sword Saint, don't talk nonsense. The Tower of Radiance is the supreme treasure of our Radiant Saint Hall. No one understands it better than our Radiant Saint Hall. How would you know what we don't? Gong Sun Ji barked. His heart had already been set alit with fury. If it were not for the fact that the person before him held supreme prestige on the desolate plain, he would have swung Godslayer's sword at him already. He treated the Tower of Radiance with absolute importance, even more than Godslayer's sword in his hands, and this was all because it was a treasure on the levels of Grand Exalts. As long as he possessed the Tower of Radiance, basically no one could harm him apart from Grand Exalts. As a result, he could not accept others saying that he was unworthy of the Tower of Radiance. That touched on a soft spot of his. In the end, Gong Sun Ji failed to get the Celestial Sword Saint to take part. He left the Sword God Mountains with a sunken face. After Gong Sun Ji left, the Celestial Sword Saint slowly opened his eyes. He stared at the Radiant Saint Hall with a deep gaze. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the formations around the Radiant Saint Hall, directly locking onto the sacred hall floating above the clouds. He murmured, Jian Chen really is someone that cannot be seen through. However, if he still doesn't appear, the Tower of Radiance will probably become the Tower of Radiance of the past. Chapter 2669. The Starsource Continent. Jian Chen did not use any power of laws in the spirit's world. He completely relied on chaotic force to advance through space. Even though he did not use the laws of space, he was as fast as regular spaceships. He flew for 3 whole days in outer space before finally seeing some scattered starlight, as well as swathes of floating meteors. He had left the empty space now and arrived in the sea of stars. However, the damage the spirit's world had suffered was even more evident here. Huge cracks hung about everywhere, sucking in all light. The cracks did not close up automatically like in the saint's world. They were like ghastly wounds, existing there forever. They would not vanish, nor would they close up. They would only grow larger and larger as they received more damage with time, increasing in number. Jian Chen also saw regions of collapsed space. The laws there were damaged, and the elements of the world were incomplete. They gave off a sense of destruction, which could strike fear within the hearts of people. In short, basically most of the space Jian Chen saw was in shambles. There were very few places that were complete. Even when he flew through space, he needed to be careful. Who knows what would happen if he fell into one of them? After another day of flying, Jian Chen finally arrived at his destination, a damaged piece of land that was floating in outer space. The Heartless Child's Jade Slip possessed information on this piece of land. It was one of the 5 sacred lands of the spirit's world, the Starsource Continent. These sacred lands were the few larger and safer pieces of land that managed to survive after the spirit's world fell into shambles. These fragments of land were the few remaining places where people could cultivate, which was why they became the 5 sacred lands of the spirit's world. Even with that being the case, the 5 sacred lands were not large. The Starsource Continent before Jian Chen was only half the size of the Cloud Plain. The Starsource Continent was enveloped by a powerful formation. The formation was like a transparent barrier, wrapping around the entirety of the continent. It only left a single place for entry and exit. Over 10,000 armored soldiers were stationed at the entrances. They collected so-called dwelling expenses from every single person that entered the Starsource Continent. There was a long-range teleportation formation on the Starsource Continent, which could allow Jian Chen to reach the world of the fallen beast as quickly as possible. As a result, this was his destination. Even from afar, it was possible to see many spaceships of various sizes and shapes parking at the entrance of the Starsource Continent. Cultivators disembarked from their spaceships either in long groups or under the lead of their seniors. They made their way towards one of the entrances. There was only one place for entry, but there were over a dozen tunnels constructed there in total. Most of them were closed off. Only a few were open. Jianshen did not want to raise much attention, so he hid his presence. He slowed down and approached the entrance. However, when the cultivators who waited in the long queue saw how Jianshen had actually flown over through outer space alone, they all looked at him with strange gazes. They were surprised. Jianshen clearly noticed the attention he was receiving, which made him frown a little. He did not know which part of him stood out, but he did not think too much of it either. Instead, he looked at a huge board floating in outer space. The board recorded the origins of the Starsource continent, as well as some information and rules regarding it. The rules of the Starsource continent were very straightforward. As a matter of fact, it could even be regarded as a lawless place. Basically, it just explained how strength reigned supreme, where experts could do whatever they wanted. This was all because there were formations personally cast down by a Grand Exalt in the depths of the continent. As a result, it was so tough that it could endure any attacks from those below Grand Exalt. Hence, there was no need to worry about the Starsource continent being damaged by fights between experts. Moreover, whether it be staying or cultivating on the Starsource continent, it was nowhere near as relaxed as in the Saints' world. The Spirits' world was already ruined, so there were extremely few places that could inhabit people. Not only did it make every inch of the place precious, but staying on the Starsource continent required a daily fee of 100 supreme-grade divine crystals as well. This was quite the price to most cultivators. Only after paying the divine crystals would one be allowed onto the Starsource continent. However, when Jianshen saw the huge waiting line, he could only give up on it. He needed to enter the world of the fallen beast as quickly as he could. He could not waste time here. Afterwards, he made his way over to another tunnel. It was rather quiet there, with very few people entering through it. However, it was the fastest way onto the Starsource continent so far. Stop. Passing through here comes with a fee of 10,000 supreme-grade divine crystals. If you don't have it, go line up. The guards there stopped Jianshen. They studied Jianshen and told him coldly. Jianshen had spent the past few days traveling, so he seemed rather travel-weary. When he passed by the meteors, he even became dirted by some dust. Naturally, the guards would not take him seriously. They even belittled him a little. In a world where the laws were incomplete like the Spirits' world, even primordial realm experts would not travel through outer space alone. They would use spaceships because it would be very difficult for them to replenish the energy they used for travel. It was exhausting and pointless to travel like this. Those below the primordial realm with a certain level of status obviously would not take risks in outer space. They would always choose to take spaceships. Not only would it be safer and faster, but it also saved effort and was comfortable. Only a few poor cultivators who could not even afford spaceships would travel through outer space by themselves. Here are 10,000 supreme-grade divine crystals. With a flip of his hand, 10,000 supreme-grade divine crystals suddenly appeared. With his current wealth, let alone 10,000 supreme-grade divine crystals, even a block of such crystals was nothing to him. He did not bring any god artifacts with him this time, but he did bring a few divine crystals. The guards were clearly surprised when they saw Jianshen take out 10,000 supreme-grade divine crystals like they were nothing. The Spirits' world was different from the Saints' world. Supreme-grade divine crystals had already run out in the Spirits' world. 10,000 of them was not a small sum. Divine crystals were far more precious in the Spirits' world. Not only did all the cultivators who had come here need them to cultivate, but they needed them to recover the energy they had expended as well. Divine crystals were crucial to everyone here. After handing over 10,000 supreme-grade divine crystals, Jianshen collected a jade medallion and made his way towards the entrance under the strange gazes of the guards. At this moment, a fiery presence appeared behind him. It was an old man in fire-red robes. He gave off the powerful presence of an infinite prime. He was clearly a primordial realm expert who had grasped the laws of fire. The old man was like Jian Chen. He wanted to enter the Starsource continent through this tunnel. However, when he saw how Jian Chen did not move after seeing him and instead made his way towards the tunnel first, he immediately frowned. His gaze suddenly became vicious. He bellowed, "Where did this brat come from? Don't you know the rules? Move." With that, the old man swung his hand, and immediately, flames appeared. They surged towards Jian Chen with terrifying heat. As soon as the old man attacked, Jian Chen sensed his strength with great precision. He was a 5th heavenly layer infinite prime. With the old man's cultivation, any single attack from him could burn late god kings to a crisp. Basically, only primordial realm experts could endure it. Just because of the order of entry, the old man had directly tried to kill Jian Chen. Chapter 2670. A single move. Jian Chen's primary reason for coming to the remnants of the spirit's world was to go to the world of the fallen beast and save Sacred Feather. He wanted to maintain a low profile with everything. As such, even when he entered the Starsource continent, he would follow the rules. He did not want to complicate matters and create unnecessary problems. However, things did not go as planned. He had never thought he would come across such an unreasonable primordial realm expert just when he wanted to pass through the tunnel. This person directly launched such a vicious attack at him right from the start. It immediately made Jian Chen's gaze turn cold. He did not want to make trouble, nor did he want to complicate matters, but that did not mean he could let something like this slide like it did not happen. After all, he was not afraid of trouble. The flames from the old man contained the power of laws. They roared furiously, and the terrifying heat even forced the guards there backwards. No one dared to stop him, nor did anyone dare to speak up. They all looked at the old man with some fear. That was the rules of the Starsource continent. Strength was everything. As long as they did not disturb the stability of the continent, basically no one would interfere. Blocking my way. Kid, you better learn in your next life, or you won't be able to live long in that life either. Though, if you can't even endure my flames, and your soul is burnt to a crisp, you won't even have the chance to have a next life. The old man's eyes were cold. Clearly, he was a murderous person. Just when Jian Chen was about to become swallowed by the flames, a powerful and sharp sword chi suddenly erupted. Compared to his previously ordinary demeanor, Jian Chen had now actually exploded with dazzling light. The ball of silver light was completely condensed from pure sword chi. It was powerful and sharp. As soon as it appeared, sword intent flooded forth. Wherever the sword intent enveloped, the space there, the time there, and the various energies there all seemed to merge with the sword intent, transforming into invisible sword chi. At that moment, the space there had completely become a domain of the sword. The old man's fire was affected as well. Under the impact of the powerful sword intent, the roaring flames actually began to tremble. Their power began to plummet, while the laws of fire rapidly vanished under the influence of the sword intent. This is the laws of the sword. No, how can the sword intent be so powerful? The sudden occurrence made the old man's eyes narrow. Disbelief flooded his face. He was also a primordial realm expert and a 5th heavenly layer infinite prime at that. He immediately knew where the sword intent came from. How is this possible? The kid who paid divine crystals to enter is actually at the primordial realm as well. However, before he could think much of it, his fire was sliced in half by a strand of silver-white sword chi. After that, the sword chi continued onwards, illuminating the sea of stars along the way. Under the stunned and shocked gazes of countless cultivators, it stabbed towards the old man mercilessly. The red-robed old man paled in fright. He could sense a fatal threat from the sword chi. It was so intense that it made his hair stand on end and sent a chill down his spine. However, he reacted extremely quickly. He immediately set up a layer of defense outside his body with the power of his cultivation. At the same time, a low-quality god artifact began to appear. However, before he could equip the god artifact, the space in front of him suddenly pulsed. The powerful sword chi had actually appeared an inch away from him, like it had suddenly teleported. It was just too close, and the sword chi was just too fast, so fast that the old man could not react at all. He could only watch as the sword chi pierced his body. Spurt. Blood sprayed. The sword chi pierced through the old man's chest as a streak of silver-white light, making his body tremble on the spot as blood spurted out from his mouth. However, the old man did not die. He stared at Jianchen like he had just seen a ghost. His eyes were filled with shock and lingering fear as he rapidly retreated. I'll spare you, seeing how arduous it was for you to attain your current level of cultivation. If you continue to be so unreasonable and domineering in the future, harassing people as soon as you meet them, you won't be able to live for long. Jianchen stood at the entrance of the tunnel and stared at the old man coldly. The old man backed up far away as he felt lingering fear. Whenever he thought about the danger he had just been in, he would become covered in cold sweat as chills ran down his spine. With his cultivation as a fifth heavenly layer infinite prime, he was one of the top of the top. As he wandered this place, his life had been in danger many times, but it had never been so close. He could not dodge the attack from before at all. With the combination of the laws of the sword and the laws of space, he did not even have time to equip his god artifact. It would have been impossible for him to escape. Fortunately, the mysterious expert who had appeared out of nowhere had no intention of taking his life, or he definitely would have been done for if the sword chi targeted his soul. His life was completely up to his opponent's whim. Why, you actually possess such strength, so why do you still pay divine crystals? Aren't you, said the old man resentfully. Originally, he had wanted to ask whether he was toying with him, but he forced back his words. Just a single move had struck fear into his heart. He was afraid of accidentally offending Jianchen. However, he did feel aggrieved. He was obviously not an ignorant person to be able to reach his current level of cultivation. He knew who he could provoke and who he could not. Normally, he would never make trouble for juniors of large organizations as long as they had not offended him beforehand. However, all juniors of large organizations would enter the Star Source continent under the lead of their seniors. There would be no need for them to pay 10,000 supreme-grade divine crystals. People who traveled alone like Jianchen and paid the entry fee would all be weaker people of insignificant backgrounds. Moreover, in the old man's eyes, he could kill or crush those people as he wished. He had never thought he would bite off far more than he could chew this time. However, when Jianchen heard the red-robed old man's words, he became confused. Was there no need to hand over 10,000 supreme-grade divine crystals when using this tunnel? At this moment, one of the guards made their way before Jianchen, trembling. As he apologized, he handed back the 10,000 supreme-grade divine crystals from Jianchen with both hands. He was extremely polite. After a series of questions, Jianchen learnt that all primordial realm experts could enter the Star Source continent through this special tunnel for free. Only cultivators below the primordial realm and were not accompanied by primordial realm experts had to follow a rule like this. Chapter 2671, The Group of Four. After dealing with that, Jianchen smiled indifferently and glanced at the frightened, surprised, and wronged red-robed old man in the distance. Afterwards, he entered the tunnel leading to the Star Source continent. Just keep the divine crystals as a gift from me. Jianchen's voice drifted out from the tunnel. The supreme-grade divine crystals were worth nothing in his eyes. He could not be bothered with taking them back. He did not kill the red-robed old man either. Although he could kill a fifth heavenly layer infinite prime effortlessly even without the 9-star sword of heavenly ways, it was not like they had any irreconcilable grudges. An appropriate punishment was enough. Of course, there was another important reason. He was in a hurry to go to the world of the fallen beast. He did not want to make things complicated here. If he became delayed, he would probably be filled with regret for the rest of his life. Turns out he doesn't know the rules here at all. The red-robed old man understood everything after Jianchen left. He looked at the bleeding wound on his chest. His face was filled with bitterness, as well as a hint of gladness. Fortunately, that senior wasn't a bloodthirsty person, or my life would be. The old man produced a long sigh. He did not plan on entering the Starsource continent immediately. Instead, he just sat down on the spot and fished out some healing pills to recover. He secretly warned himself to hold back with his actions in the future. Nearby, the cultivators who stood in the long lines obviously witnessed the conflict between Jian Chen and the red-robed old man. Many of them were stunned by the great strength Jian Chen had displayed. Then they gulped and broke out into discussions. Heavens, that is the famed Yen Mo of the spirit's world. Yen Mo has actually been defeated. Who is that young man in white? How is he so strong? It was one strike, just one strike to defeat Yen Mo. Yen Mo is a fifth heavenly layer infinite prime. Surely that young man is a chaotic prime, right? Yen Mo has committed evil all these years in the spirit's world. If he remains alive, who knows how many more people will die. Why didn't that mysterious expert finish him off? What a pity. Yen Mo almost died. Grandfather, don't worry. I will definitely work hard on cultivating and break through to the primordial realm as soon as possible so that I can personally kill Yen Mo and avenge you. Around half of the cultivators there secretly cursed Yen Mo. As they stood in the line, it was clear that they were not primordial realm experts or anyone with particularly powerful backgrounds. And it was exactly people like them that Yen Mo would never show any mercy towards. He would directly kill them if they did even the slightest thing that displeased him. Grand Primes were basically unwilling to come to this ruined world, so the strongest experts that could be found here were chaotic primes. However, basically all of them had only come to escort their juniors. They would not stay for long. As a result, with Yen Mo's cultivation as a fifth heavenly layer infinite prime, he could indeed act without consequences here. At this moment, a medium-sized spaceship slowly glid over from afar, stopping nearby. All the cultivators looked over reflexively and discovered that the spaceship was a commercial one. It was the type that could be hired for a certain amount of divine crystals. It did not belong to a large organization. The spaceship stopped, and many cultivators immediately flew out. They were packed like locusts, where several 100,000 would be a low estimate. The spaceship was bigger on the inside. One of them was equivalent to a miniature world. It could hold 1 million people with ease. Basically all of the cultivators from the spaceship lined up at the very end. Clearly, they wanted to enter the Starsource continent as well. An extremely few number of primordial realm experts skipped the line and directly entered the continent through the special tunnel. It's Yen Mo. Yen Mo is actually injured. When the primordial realm experts saw the old man healing, they became stern. All of them made their way around him. Most of the primordial realm experts were early infinite primes. There was a single fourth heavenly layer infinite prime among them. They were still quite far off from a fifth heavenly layer infinite prime like Yen Mo in terms of strength. At this moment, 4 old men in simple robes flew out from the spaceship. They all gave off the presences of late god kings. Late god kings were very common here, so they did not raise any particular attention. However, what really drew the gazes of people were the swords on their backs. Each sword was wrapped in beast hide, only leaving a hilt poking out. Their appearance managed to attract much attention, as it was far too rare for people to carry swords on their backs like that in both the spirit's world and the saint's world. The 4 old men did not mind the strange gazes. They flew through the crowd like it was no big deal, about to line up to enter the Starsource continent. However, at this moment, they suddenly saw Yen Mo, who was healing there. Their eyes all sharpened, and a powerful sword intent radiated from them. It's Yen Mo. He's actually here. Fall into formation and kill him, the 4 old men bellowed out together, and their cultivation as late god kings completely erupted. With the guidance of their fingers, clear thrums rang out, and 4 metal swords shot into the air. They shone resplendently, giving off a powerful sword intent. The 4 of them immediately stood in a formation. Their hands moved about in front of their chests, creating seals. They bellowed out, of the vast world, all is one. With the nirvanic sword formation, only we are supreme. With the four swords as one, worlds shall be annihilated. With their voices, the four swords in the air shone brightly, becoming four huge pillars of light that pierced the surroundings. Each pillar of light enveloped a single person, and when they chanted, "Four swords as one," the four pillars suddenly fused together, shining blindingly. The four of them vanished into the pillars, as if they had fused into the pillar with the swords. The sudden disturbance alarmed all the cultivators there. At that moment, whether it be the primordial realm experts who had just disembarked from the spaceship or the godhood cultivators waiting in line, they all looked over. It's the four strange people. What are they doing? It looks like they're attacking Yen Mo. For late god kings are actually challenging a fifth heavenly layer infinite prime? Is there something wrong with them? Discovering their intentions, everyone became stunned, including the primordial realm experts. Yen Mo also discovered the situation behind him. He immediately stopped healing and stood up. He glared at the fused pillar of light and his face sank. It's you lot. I looked for you for so long, but I never thought you would come to me today. Since you're here already, you might as well stay and hand over the secret technique obediently. Yen Mo sneered. Excitement flickered in his eyes secretly as flames erupted from his body. There are chaotic primes on the Starsource continent, so I have to take the four of them away before they arrive, thought Yen Mo. The four people before him grasped an extremely powerful secret technique, so powerful that it even tempted him, someone who comprehended the laws of fire. He had personally witnessed the four old men kill a third heavenly layer infinite prime as early god kings when they used the sword technique. Chapter 2672, A terrifying sword formation for early god kings had actually killed a third heavenly layer infinite prime so many cultivation levels higher through a sword formation alone. If news of this made it out, everyone would think it was a make-believe story. No one would believe it. This was because let alone four early god kings, even four peak god kings or even four supreme god kings from the god king's throne could not kill a third heavenly layer infinite prime through a formation alone. Yet, Yen Mo just happened to have witnessed something so preposterous from the four old men. He had seen it with his naked eyes, so it was impossible for him to refute it. It had to be mentioned that the four old men were early god kings back then. That was more than enough to demonstrate the shockingness of the sword formation. It was enough to drive everyone crazy over it. Yen Mo was one of the people who had been driven crazy by the sword formation. Even though he had no inkling about the way of the sword, he would benefit as long as he could get his hands on the sword formation and study it. As a result, when he saw the four old men, his heart began to thump with excitement. He was tempted to howl out in joy. However, he knew that there were many onlookers in the surroundings. There were even chaotic primes in some of the spaceships, so he dared not show any of his joy, just in case he raised any suspicion. I need to end the battle fast and capture them as quickly as I can. Then I can take them away and slowly get them to spill their secrets. As long as the four of them end up in my hands, I'm sure I can get what I want from them. Yen Mo made up his mind. He used his full strength right from the start. His cultivation surged forth violently, and the laws of fire descended. The scorching flames distorted the space there as terrifying heat pervaded the surroundings, forcing back the closer cultivators. Under Yen Mo's control, the terrifying flames formed a ball. Like a cage, it enveloped the four old men, obscuring what was happening there. He tried to hide everything. He did not want even more people to see what happened next. Afterwards, he used the power of his cultivation to create a huge hand. It passed through the cage made from the laws of fire and fell towards the four old men. Even though he was injured by Jian Chen, he was still a fifth heavenly layer infinite prime after all. He was still extremely powerful despite his wounds. Many of the cultivators standing in line secretly shook their heads at this. They sighed for the four old men. Even though the four old men comprehended one of the laws with the greatest offensive power, and their sword formation seemed extraordinary, there was still no one who thought highly of them. All of them believed the four old men would be facing death. The difference was just far too great. How could four late god kings face off against a fifth heavenly layer infinite prime? In their opinion, they might have been able to put up a fight with their laws of the sword along with the support of a sword formation if it were a first heavenly layer infinite prime. However, it was utterly hopeless against a fifth heavenly layer. At this moment, an alarming streak of light suddenly appeared. The cage of Yen Mo's laws of the fire seemed as fragile as paper before the light. The light ripped open a hole silently before continuing onwards and piercing through Yen Mo's huge hand with a blinding glow. It directly continued towards Yen Mo. Yen Mo immediately felt like it had locked onto his presence firmly. He stared at the incoming light, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. His face changed drastically, now filled with shock and disbelief. He could sense a threat from the sword chi. The sword formation from four mere late god kings was actually enough to threaten him, a fifth heavenly infinite prime. Such a matter was astounding. That was not it. With his powerful soul and instincts, he could sense a sliver of obscure power that made him shiver in fright. It was impossible for this power to come from a god king. Let alone god kings, even infinite primes could not come close to it. How is this possible? They're clearly just late god kings. Yen Mo's heart churned. In the next moment, a low-quality god artifact appeared and enveloped him completely. This was the armor he wanted to wear when he faced Jian Chen, but he just did not have the time to do so before Jian Chen's laws of space. Now that he faced the attack from the four old men, he finally had the opportunity to use it. At the same time, he extended a figure, and he immediately conjured the laws of fire, turning into a red pillar and darting towards the sword chi. He attempted to weaken the sword chi's power. The sword chi tore through everything with astonishing might, crushing everything Yen Mo had set up to block its way. In the end, it struck Yen Mo's waist. Blood splattered immediately. Yen Mo's waist was severed, cut into two. The low-quality god artifact on him was basically useless, unable to stop anything. Yen Mo paled in fright. He lowered his head to look at the other half of his body before glancing at the sword chi again. He showed horror for the first time. To the other side, the sword chi stopped nearby after cutting Yen Mo in half. It rapidly dimmed, vanishing as if it had lost all power. It revealed the four old men. He's actually still alive. Fall into formation. All right. Wipe out his soul and kill him for good, the four old men bellowed out when they saw how Yen Mo was still alive. They stood in a sword formation once again with great understanding. Yen Mo had already learnt the power of the sword formation. Even the god artifact he believed to be extremely tough was basically useless before it. There was no way he was bold enough to take on a second attack like that. He knew that he managed to survive this time due to luck. The attack did not touch his soul. Otherwise, he would be dead already. As a result, when he heard the calls from the four old men, Yen Mo was scared stiff. He dared not linger a moment longer, shooting off into the tunnel nearby with a flash. He entered the Starsource continent. Get him! The four old men called out together, and killing intent shone in their eyes. As if they had some irreconcilable grievance with Yen Mo, they immediately pursued him. The entrance they took was specially prepared for Primordial Realm experts. Primordial Realm experts could use it for free, but those below the Primordial Realm had to pay a fee of 10,000 Supreme-grade Divine Crystals. However, none of the guards stationed there dared to stop them as they chased Yen Mo. As a result, they passed through smoothly. As soon as they vanished, a few figures immediately flickered out from some spaceships nearby. They moved extremely quickly, entering the Starsource continent through the same tunnel. They were all chaotic primes. The sword formation that the four old men had used managed to force the fifth heavenly layer infinite prime, Yen Mo, into fleeing, despite them only being late god kings. It was clearly powerful and mystical enough to catch the attention of many chaotic primes. Chapter 2673, Past Acquaintances. After the various chaotic primes entered the Starsource continent, the space returned to peace again. Of course, it was only peaceful on the surface. The hearts of the cultivator who stood in the long lines were in turmoil, thumping heavily and speeding up the flow of blood through their bodies. Heavens! Surely that can't be real. For late God Kings actually heavily injured the fifth heavenly layer infinite prime Yen Mo. It was just one strike. They used one strike to incapacitate Yen Mo, forcing him to flee onto the Starsource continent. This is unbelievable. Even the low-quality God artifact was split into two. How powerful is that? Are the four of them really just late God Kings? Oh my God, for God Kings are actually hunting down a fifth heavenly layer infinite prime. Are they disciples of a sovereign? Even the disciples of sovereigns aren't that powerful. They used a terrifying sword formation, After the momentary silence, the surroundings exploded into a hubbub. Everyone was amazed. They showed shock, disbelief, and so on. There were even a few late God Kings who rubbed their eyes, struggling to accept what they had just witnessed. The Starsource continent was not large, but the land was used much more effectively than the Cloud Plains land. The Spirit's world was already destroyed. Only 5 pieces of land remained in the entire world, so basically all the cultivators from the Saints' world gathered there. Naturally, the place was overpopulated, making every inch of it precious. They used up everywhere they could to build various structures and stores. Even a few places that could not be used were claimed by weaker cultivators to set up temporary dwellings. The inns on the Starsource continent were extremely expensive. No one besides descendants of large clans and organizations could afford them. As a result, all they could do was remain outside and brave the wilderness, facing constant danger. There were several dozen cities of various sizes on the Starsource continent. Basically all of them were under the control of a few large clans or organizations from the Saints' world. The largest city was Starsource City. Starsource City was named after the continent. Not only was it the largest city on there, but it was also one that had weathered time and survived. It had stood there since time immemorial. Over the years, the cities on the continent would constantly be replaced. After wars and battles, they would be destroyed and rebuilt. However, Starsource City had survived all that. The city was a part of the Starsource continent, protected by the Grand Exalts formation. In a place where even Grand Primes were unwilling to stay, chaotic primes basically stood supreme, so it was obviously impossible for it to be destroyed. Jian Shen had arrived in Starsource City because the teleportation formation between the 5 sacred lands of the Spirit's world was located there. It was also the only teleportation formation on the entire continent. The Spirit's world was ruined. Space was incomplete, unlike the Saints' world. The 5 sacred lands were extremely distant from each other as well, so building a long-range teleportation formation was basically impossible. Even some peak organizations in the Saints' world did not have the ability to construct a long-range teleportation formation under such harsh conditions. The only teleportation formation on the Starsource continent was apparently personally cast down by the Grand Exalt of Ancient Paths countless years ago. Only teleportation formations personally cast down by Grand Exalts could ensure safe travel over this tremendous distance. Jian Shen directly made his way towards the center of the city where the teleportation formation was located. He looked around along the way, studying the stores on the sides of the streets. The buying power of divine crystals is actually so great. I can actually purchase a low-quality god artifact for half the price compared to the Saints' world. And not just that, even the cultivation methods of various levels are cheaper here. Jian Shen wondered in interest. He knew that divine crystals were simply far too valuable in the Spirit's world. As a result, their worth had increased. If he could bring in the divine crystals from the Saints' world and buy a bunch of god artifacts and cultivation methods here before reselling them in the Saints' world, it would be an extremely fast way to make money. Of course, there were people who did that. A low-quality god artifact just retrieved from the burial region. It's perfect, only for 500,000 supreme-grade divine crystals. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Come get it before it's gone, a call rang out. An old man sat on the ground up ahead, laying out a shining sword and some fragments that clearly belonged to other god artifacts. 500,000 supreme-grade divine crystals for a low-quality god artifact? For real? Let's go have a look. With that, many cultivators immediately made their way over. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. 500,000 supreme-grade divine crystals for a low-quality god artifact was indeed too cheap. Even with the buying power of divine crystals here, it was impossible for a god artifact to sell for that cheap. He immediately made his way over as well out of curiosity. He could tell with a single glance that the interior of the god artifact was completely destroyed, and its perfect shell had clearly been handled as well. The resplendent light was due to a formation that disguised its interior, so it seemed to be in perfect condition. If it really was used, it would completely collapse on itself after a few attacks. Jian Chen continued on his way and discovered that there were quite a few people doing such things. There were scams everywhere. The slightest carelessness could cost a great deal. Of course, he did discover some impressive items, such as heavenly resources that a few cultivators had managed to find out of pure chance from zones of danger, as well as impressive materials for refining weapons. He swept the surroundings with the senses of his soul and even discovered a fragment of a high-quality god artifact in a store protected by formations. The spirit's world had once experienced a devastating war. Far too many experts died here, so there would obviously be a few remnants remaining. As a result, this place became a treasured land for training and exploration. Jian Chen had almost arrived at the teleportation formation now. At this moment, Jian Chen suddenly looked at the sky and discovered a ball of fire shooting over at lightning speed. It moved extremely quickly, crossing the sky and heading directly for the teleportation formation. Jian Chen recognized the person with a single glance. It was Yen Mo, who he had injured with a single strike. Move, all of you, move. Let me use the teleportation formation first. Yen Mo bellowed out. He was frantic. Jian Chen ignored Yen Mo. Instead, he looked behind him, and his eyes narrowed suddenly. A strand of sword chi followed Yen Mo. It gave off powerful sword intent and also moved extremely quickly. It was no slower than Yen Mo. However, what Jian Chen saw was the interior of the sword chi. There were 4 figures wielding a powerful sword formation, fusing as one to create the sword chi that pursued Yen Mo, the nirvanic sword formation. It's the presence of the nirvanic sword formation. At the same time, the silent sword spirits awakened in the depths of Jian Chen's consciousness. They began paying attention to the outside world for the first time in quite a while. It's them. Why would they appear in the spirit's world? A strange light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes, as well as undisguisable excitement. He had already recognized the 4 of them. They were the 4 brothers who had obtained the partial legacy of the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt back on the world of the Tian Yuan continent, Ada and his brothers. Suddenly, he looked at the fleeing Yen Mo and formed a sword with his fingers, directly extending it towards Yen Mo. Chapter 2674, Slain. A sword chi shot off into the air, shining brightly and illuminating most of the Starsource continent, targeting Yen Mo with powerful sword intent. Yen Mo fled desperately. He no longer had the courage to face the 4 brothers' nirvanic sword formation. It was simply too powerful, basically enough to startle the world. His low-quality god artifact was actually useless before it. The terrifying power struck fear into the depths of his heart. As a result, the only thing he could think of right now was to leave the Starsource continent through the teleportation formation and avoid their pursuit. He was just about to reach the teleportation formation, but a strand of powerful sword chi suddenly swept through the air and shot over with great speed. Before the attack even arrived, the terrifying sword chi had locked onto him. Yen Mo turned around to look. When he discovered Jian Chen on a busy street, his face suddenly changed drastically. He immediately called out, "Senior, it was this old crook's fault outside, causing you offense." This old crook will apologize to you right here, so I hope you can be the bigger person and spare someone as lowly as this old crook. Yan Mo's attitude experienced a complete 180. Not only did he refer to Jian Chen as a senior, but he even called himself an old crook. He no longer dared to show any arrogance at all. As he said that, a powerful energy surged out from Yan Mo, forming a shield of fire to block Jian Chen's sword chi. However, Yan Mo had already been injured twice. The Nirvanic sword formation from the four brothers had caused him even greater harm than Jian Chen's previous attack, so his battle prowess was affected. He was nowhere close to his peak, so the shield he condensed in a hurry was obviously unable to stop Jian Chen's attack. Spurt. The sword chi collapsed the shield before passing through his body again. Another bloody hole appeared. However, Jian Chen did not want to kill Yan Mo with that attack. He just wanted to slow him down to prevent him from reaching the teleportation formation. As a result, even though his sword chi was astonishing, it only inflicted a wound to Yan Mo's body and was not fatal. However, Yan Mo understood exactly how powerful Jian Chen was. He did not believe Jian Chen was trying to slow him down at all. Instead, he interpreted Jian Chen as someone who disliked those who acted arrogantly and harassed others. He had already received a bloody punishment for that earlier outside. And now, his calls and ruthless actions to reach the teleportation formation sooner had perhaps displeased Jian Chen yet again. As a result, he dished out a slight punishment again, which was why he apologized in a hurry. "Thank you for showing mercy, senior. I've run out of options because of the situation I'm in right now." "Oh right. Senior, the four people pursuing me possess a supreme sword formation. With Senior's mastery over the way of the sword, I'm confident that you'll be able to reach the apex if you obtain it." He would have been better off without mentioning the sword formation. Now that it was mentioned, Jian Chen frowned, and a cold light flickered through his eyes. He glared at Yan Mo. In the next moment, the space around Yan Mo suddenly pulsed. The space there was disturbed. The laws of space permeated the area, as if someone was tampering with it. Yan Mo's face changed drastically. He obviously discovered the difference in the surroundings. It directly affected his speed, slowing him down to a millionth of his original speed. He would only need 5 or 10 seconds to reach the teleportation formation originally, but he would probably need a minute now. "Senior, what are you doing?" Yan Mo panicked and suddenly looked at Jian Chen. "I happen to be using the teleportation formation," Jian Chen said indifferently. However, with that delay, the four brothers caught up from behind. The huge strand of sword chi split into 4 smaller strands of sword chi and surrounded Yan Mo. The four brothers were obscured in the light, fading in and out. They seemed to be creating hand seals. "W, what is this sword formation? W, why do 4 god kings wield such great power?" Yan Mo's face changed drastically, and he turned pale. He discovered that he was now trapped in the sword formation. The 4 god kings seemed to grasp more than one sword formation. Every single one of them were extremely powerful. The 4 of them had split up from the sword chi and created another sword formation. Moreover, the sword formation possessed the power to isolate space and time. It could trap an entire region for good. The 4 of them stood in a square, forming a formation that Yan Mo struggled to break out of. What a powerful sword formation! Countless people witnessed what was going on in the sky from the streets below. Jian Chen was naturally no exception. At that moment, he was surprised. He could not help but sigh in amazement. With his insight, he could tell just how powerful the 4 brothers' sword formation was. Although their cultivation levels were nothing special, they could unleash unimaginable power once they used their sword formations. Moreover, he could closely sense a somewhat familiar presence from the sword formation. The sword of mortality, the sword of reincarnation, the sword of slaughter, and the sword of severance. They are the 4 swords of the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. Although I've never seen their actual forms, the Inata Tower was filled with their presence. Every single sword contains a different aura. Their sword formation actually contains the aura of the 4 swords. No wonder it's so powerful. Jian Chen was secret amazed. He could vaguely see the presence that the four swords had left behind in the Anata Tower from the hazy figures of the four brothers. Yen Mo, you massacred the entire family of our savior. Today, we will avenge him. Kill him. At this moment, the four brothers bellowed out together. Suddenly, they turned into four swords and intertwined with alarming light. The moment the four swords crossed with one another, the world seemed to achieve peace, where even the sun and moon switched positions. They erupted with enough power to terrify countless infinite primes. It was like they could split the heavens from the earth and tear up the cosmos. However, this devastating power only appeared for a split second before vanishing in the blink of an eye like it had never appeared. Even Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed. The flash of devastating power when the four strands of sword chi crossed one another through the use of the sword formation had astonished him. What a powerful sword formation, Jian Chen was amazed. However, he did not feel surprised. After all, the four brothers' legacy came from the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. The Nirvanic Immortal Exalt was the undisputed greatest expert of the Immortals world, such that even the old master of the twin swords paled slightly in comparison. The sword formation vanished, and Yen Mo fell out of the sky as a corpse. A fifth heavenly layer infinite prime had fallen to the hands of four late god kings. Everyone who witnessed this within Starsource City was left speechless. Whether it be the cultivators on the streets or the primordial realm experts hidden throughout the place, they were all stunned. They were tongue-tied from shock. For late god kings had actually slain a fifth heavenly layer infinite prime. Such a matter was unprecedented. If this made it out, it would be enough to shake up the entire Saints world. Chapter 2675, Threat Plop. A sound plop. A sound rang out in the wide streets, and Yen Mo's corpse struck the ground heavily. It kicked up dust. The people in the surroundings continued to stare at Yen Mo's corpse. They were dumbfounded. All of them felt like they were dreaming. They dared not accept what they had just witnessed. Out in the wide streets, and Yen Mo's corpse struck the ground heavily. It kicked up dust. The people in the surroundings continued to stare at Yen Mo's corpse. They were dumbfounded. All of them felt like they were dreaming. They dared not accept what they had just witnessed. The four brothers slowly descended from the air. They stared at Yen Mo's corpse coldly. They were filled with undisguisable hatred. This hatred was so deep that it did not subside even after they killed Yen Mo. Jian Chen suddenly vanished from the other side. He had crossed several streets using the laws of space, appearing near Yen Mo's corpse. He stared at the four brothers and revealed a rare smile. The four brothers had already removed Yen Mo's space ring. They seemed to sense something, and they suddenly turned around to look behind them. Immediately, their gazes all gathered on Jian Chen. His familiar face and familiar presence made their eyes narrow. Jian Chen. In the next moment, they instinctively called out. They were filled with joy, and their voices were filled with surprise and shock. They probably had not thought that they would be able to meet an old acquaintance from the lower world in the vast spirits world either. Back on the Tianyuan continent, the four brothers were not particularly close to Jian Chen, much less anything close to being sworn brothers. However, they were friends. In this foreign land, this friendship was precious, so the four brothers obviously became overjoyed. Unknowingly, their hatred towards Yen Ma faded by quite a lot after they saw Jian Chen. Just when Jian Chen wanted to say something, he suddenly frowned. He looked at the only place with entrances to the Starsource continent in the air, and his face changed. Quite a few chaotic primes have come. They are probably coming for you. You better leave quickly, Jian Chen said sternly. The four brothers seemed to sense the arrival of the chaotic primes as well. They also became stern. They could deal with infinite primes like Yen Mo with Jian Chen by their side, but chaotic primes were nothing like fifth heavenly layer infinite primes. They did not have the slightest confidence in facing a chaotic prime. Moreover, They too could sense that there was far more than one chaotic prime coming for them right now. I founded a Tian Yuan clan on the cloud plain of the 49 Great Plains of the Saints' world. You can come find me there in the future, Jian Chen said secretly. He had no idea if he could find the four brothers again in the spirit's world after separating here, so he took the initiative to give them a method of contact. The four brothers nodded. Time was extremely tight. They dared not tarry at all. Immediately, they fell into a sword formation and prepared to escape. Stay put, juniors, don't go, fellows, please stay. At the same time, various calls rang out together. Several chaotic primes gave off astonishing presences in the distant sky, tearing through the air with unmatched speeds. They hurried over like streaks of lightning. They created such a great disturbance that it rumbled like thunder, deafening all the cultivators present. Some of the weaker cultivators even directly fainted. These chaotic primes were clearly the stronger experts who had come pursuing, which was why they had managed to shake off everyone else and arrive first. Before they even arrived, terrifying pressures had already descended, causing the space around the four brothers to suddenly freeze. The damaged laws of the world and the surroundings fell into a mess. Under the presence, the laws became disordered. Jian Chen was the closest to the four brothers. He was affected as well. Under the tremendous pressure, he felt his body become as heavy as a mountain. The space there seemed to become quicksand, making it difficult for him to move. Oh no! Jian Chen's heart sank. Even he had been reduced to such a shape, let alone the four brothers. It would be impossible for them to escape under the terrifying pressure. A vicious light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes. The 4 strands of profound sword qi he had condensed in his soul suddenly jumped to life. 3 of them were ready to be used. He could already tell that these experts were late chaotic primes, which was the 7th heavenly layer or even beyond that. Before such experts, only his profound sword qi would have some effect. Perhaps, he could buy some time for the 4 brothers. Master, please wait. The 4 brothers aren't as simple as you imagine them to be. Just when Jian Chen was about to draw the profound sword qi, the indifferent voices of the sword spirits rang out in his head. Jian Chen was surprised. However, before he could ask about it, the 4 brothers suddenly bellowed out, "Let's go. With the 4 swords as one, all shall be destroyed." Dazzling light shot into the air. The formation from the 4 brothers seemed to be able to penetrate all obstructions. The 4 clusters of light suddenly fused together before vanishing. The restrictive pressures from the chaotic primes remained, making the space seem like it was frozen. However, the 4 brothers were no longer there. What? They escaped. The chaotic primes basically arrived where the 4 brothers had vanished at the same time. They were all surprised. They expanded the powerful senses of their souls to search, enveloping the entire Starsource continent in an instant. Afterwards, another dozen or so chaotic primes arrived. They all expanded the senses of their souls as well, enveloping the entire place in search of the 4 brothers. However, no matter how they looked, the 4 brothers seemed to have vanished into thin air. They could not find a single trace of them. They've already escaped. It really is such a pity to miss such a powerful sword formation. Do any of you know what that sword formation is? It can actually display such power in the hands of 4 god kings. How terrifying! If we obtained that sword formation, the strength of our clan would increase by quite a lot. The chaotic primes all gathered there and sighed and shook their heads. Many of them felt very regretful. Kid, you seem to know the 4 of them? At this moment, a cold voice rang out. Jian Chen immediately felt like a sharp pair of eyes had locked onto him, piercing into him like blades. The question came from a bald old man in white robes. He was the expert who had arrived first. He was a late chaotic prime. With that, all the chaotic primes gathered there looked over. Many of their gazes were piercing. Senior, whether I know them or not doesn't seem to have anything to do with Senior. Jian Chen's face did not change as he replied steadily. However, he had already started fuming inside. The old man originally wanted to threaten Jian Chen, but seeing how fearless he was, he ran out of confidence. He immediately snorted coldly. "Kid, which organization in the Saints' world do you belong to? You're so arrogant that you should be careful of causing problems for the organization behind you." Chapter 2676, Surrounded by Admirers, Be Careful of Causing Problems for the Organization Behind You? Jian Chen sneered. The old man's cultivation level was even higher than Su Ran's. He was an expert who had reached the 7th heavenly layer of chaotic prime. It was impossible for Jian Chen to fend off someone like that unless he fused the twin swords. As a result, Jian Chen could only intimidate him. He had to strike fear into his heart to stop him from acting recklessly. The old man immediately paled in anger as he looked at Jian Chen's mocking expression. He was a mighty 7th heavenly layer chaotic prime, a great elder of a peak clan in the Saints' world. His status was so great, so revered, yet he was being made fun of by a junior here. It immediately vexed him. Faint killing intent began to build up within his heart. People like him would treat their pride with extremely great importance. Jian Chen's attitude directly trampled over his pride. However, before he could do anything, Jian Chen's next words made his face change drastically. "I came to the spirits world under the escortment of Senior Heartless from the Myriad Bone Guild. Do you plan on creating trouble for Senior Heartless of the Myriad Bone Guild today on the Starsource continent?" Jian Chen said relaxedly. "What? What did you say? The Myriad Bone Guild? Do you come from the Myriad Bone Guild?" The old man who tried to threaten Jian Chen immediately paled in fright. Just what kind of existence was the Myriad Bone Guild? Even though they were just an organization of assassins, they stood at the pinnacle of the Saints' world. They had truly reached the apex, a terrifying organization only second to Grand Exalts. In the Saints' world, the weaker cultivators would not necessarily have the right to learn about the Myriad Bone Guild, but these chaotic primes knew exactly what it represented. The Myriad Bone Guild was an organization they could only look up to, but it also struck fear into their hearts. Let alone them, even the powerful clans behind them held deep fear towards the Myriad Bone Guild. "He's actually from the Myriad Bone Guild." With that, all of the chaotic primes gathered there could no longer remain calm. Just the 3 words, Myriad Bone Guild, had frightened quite a lot of them. They deeply understood just how powerful the Myriad Bone Guild was. If they offended the Myriad Bone Guild, not only would they be dead for sure, but even the organizations behind them would be destroyed. "Wait, what did you just say? Senior Heartless of the Myriad Bone Guild? Isn't this Senior Heartless?" At this moment, the expression of one of the chaotic primes changed. He asked with a voice that trembled slightly. "I've basically heard about all the famed experts of the Myriad Bone Guild. There's no one who goes by the name of Heartless among them. No, there is one." Is he?" Immediately, all the chaotic primes gathered there seemed to think of something. Their faces changed abruptly. As for the old man who had threatened Jian Chen first, he had already become sheet white. "Impossible. Impossible. The Heartless Child is the second boss of the Myriad Bone Guild. He reached the 8th heavenly layer of Grand Prime a long time ago, and it's said that he's extremely close to the 9th heavenly layer now. His status is so great, so why would he personally escort a junior to the spirits world?" A chaotic prime cried out in disbelief. The Heartless Child's reputation was far too great. Even to the Peak clan behind him, it bore the weight of a mountain. He was an existence they could never afford to provoke. "So you're actually from the Myriad Bone Guild?" "I am Zhang Yun. I come from the Heavens sect from planet Kangmang of the Saints' world. Our Heavens sect has made many deals with the Myriad Bone Guild in the past. We're one of their biggest clients, so speaking of which, we're not really strangers." A heavy voice boomed out from the sky. A sagely old man descended with a group of disciples from the Heavens sect. It seemed like he had just entered the Starsource continent. "It's actually the people of the Heavens sect. The Heavens sect is the unofficial ruler of planet Kangmang. Their strongest ancestor is the planet lord there. Zhan Yun is one of the 6 heaven great elders of the Heavens sect. The great elders of the Heavens sect are divided into 3 levels: heaven, earth, and mortal. They correspond to late chaotic prime, mid chaotic prime, and early chaotic prime. The people who usually accompany their juniors to the spirit's world are mortal and earth great elders. I never thought they would send a heaven great elder this time. How rare! The arrival of the great elder of the Heavens sect immediately raised the attention of many. Planet Kangmang ranked among the top 10 out of the 81 great planets of the Saints' world. As their unofficial ruler, the Heavens sect was extremely powerful among all the peak organizations of the Saints' world. The great elder of the Heavens sect, Zhan Yun, glided over through the air. He smiled and seemed approachable, arriving before Jian Chen in just a few steps. He sighed in amazement. I was fortunate enough to see you earlier when he crossed through the tunnel between the worlds. However, a supreme expert accompanied you, so you moved with astonishing speed. I was on a sky vessel, and with its speed, I could only catch a single glance of you before you vanished. I was utterly amazed by that senior's terrifying cultivation. I began to contemplate just which important figure of the Saints' world had ventured to the Spirit's world. Only now have I learnt from you that it's Senior Heartless of the Myriad Bone Guild. In all these years I've lived, I've only heard about Senior Heartless' great name. I've never had the right to witness his might in person. I never thought I would actually brush past the famous Senior Heartless in the tunnel earlier. It really is a stroke of luck for me. Zhan Yen was rather excited, behaving as if it were a great honor to brush past the Heartless child. Even as a chaotic prime, he struggled to maintain his demeanor. However, with that, Jian Chen's identity became even more consolidated. There were people who doubted whether Jian Chen really came from the Myriad Bone Guild or not earlier, but they firmly believed it now. Everyone's gazes towards Jian Chen underwent an overwhelming change. They struggled to imagine just how great his status was in the Myriad Bone Guild to be personally escorted to the spirit's world by the Heartless child. Even if they were 100 times braver, they would still never dare to offend someone like that. Even the ancestors behind them would never dare to. As for the old man who had threatened Jian Chen earlier, he was filled with regret. His attitude experienced a 180 transformation, and he lowered himself to apologize to Jian Chen. He could not afford to not apologize. If he did not resolve this slight falling out as soon as possible, he would probably be punished by his ancestor when he returned. After all, they could not afford to offend the Myriad Bone Guild, much less someone personally accompanied by the Heartless child. The status of such a person would be unimaginably great. The great elder from the Heavens sect did his best to establish a good relationship with Jian Chen. He treated Jian Chen so kindly that it made the disciples of the Heavens sect behind him widen their eyes. They were in a state of disbelief. At that moment, the great elder had done something that completely toppled their understanding. The proud disciples of the Heavens sect struggled to accept this. It was not just the great elder from the Heavens sect either. The other chaotic primes gathered here had lowered themselves as well, smiling as they conversed with Jian Chen. In the blink of an eye, Jian Chen became the center of attention. He became a target that all the organizations tried to appease. He was surrounded by admirers. However, Jian Chen instead felt pressured. He knew that his relationship with the Myriad Bone Guild was a collaboration at most. It was completely different from what everyone imagined it to be. If the truth was revealed and the chaotic primes realized that they had been toyed with, they would never drop the matter. As a result, he did not stay any longer. He came up with a reason to break away from them before stepping onto the teleportation formation and leaving the Starsource continent. Even the 5-colored divine crystals for the teleportation formation were covered by a few chaotic primes. They took the initiative to pay for him. Swish! With a flash of white light, Jian Chen vanished from the teleportation formation. He had left the Starsource continent. The Dark Star continent was another sacred land in the remnants of the spirit's world. It was much larger than the Starsource continent, equivalent to the Cloud Plain. Of course, this was not the complete Darkstar continent either, it was just a broken fragment. The rules on the Darkstar continent and the Starsource continent were basically the same. It was mostly the same apart from their differing names. Darkstar City was the only major city on the Darkstar continent, and it was protected by formations from a Grand Exalt. It possessed the only teleportation formation on the entire continent. However, the Darkstar continent was much more prosperous than the Starsource continent, as the number of cultivators gathered there amounted to several dozen times more. This was all because of the miniature world sealed here, the world of the fallen beast renowned in the spirits world. Chapter 2677, The 100 Tribulations God King Pill. The world of the fallen beast was extremely famous in the spirits world. It could be said that all cultivators who possessed a great grasp over information or had spent some time in the spirits world would know about its existence. This was because the world of the fallen beast possessed the only race that completely survived after the spirits world's destruction. That was one of the peak races that roamed the spirits world in the past, the Darkstar race. It was also because of the Darkstar race that the piece of land had been named the Darkstar continent. When the spirits world was still intact, this land was a tiny piece of the vast territory under the Darkstar race's control. Of course, the spirits world was now in tatters. Only 5 fragments of land in somewhat better condition remained. As a result, the Darkstar continent's area was less than a tenth of the Darkstar race's former territory. In terms of territory alone, the Darkstar race's former land was even vaster than the Prosper Plain, one of the 7 sacred plains of the Saints' world. Of course, that was just in terms of area. It did not mean that the Darkstar race in the past was stronger than the current heavenly palace of Biyao. The structures of the 2 vastly different worlds varied as well. The spirits world was basically completely divided into races. The entire place was carved up by a few powerful races, with many other subsidiary races below them. As a result, the spirits world in the past was completely divided between the peak races with Grand Exalts. It was a place completely different from the Saints' world. The Grand Exalts of the Saints' world had no desire for conquest. Even the undisputed greatest expert of the past, the war god of the God clan, had only occupied the Godnigma plane. Even with the title of greatest clan in the Saints' world, they did not interfere with the matters of other planes. The heavenly palace of Biyao only developed quietly on the Prosper Plain. They enjoyed their supreme status, but they did not conquer the entire place. At this moment, Jian Chen sensed something and suddenly looked into the distance. At the end of the wide street was a cluster of powerful presences. They formed a surging billow, sweeping out into the surroundings. A group of cultivators in similar attires slowly walked uniformly. There were over 1,000 people in total, and without any exceptions, they were all early god kings. These people clearly belonged to an extremely powerful organization. Wherever they passed by, the surrounding cultivators would all step aside and show a sliver of fear. Even a few infinite primes would stand aside quietly when they saw the group. Jian Chen looked at the people and frowned slightly. From all the god kings, he sensed something very off, as they definitely were not ordinary cultivators or ordinary god kings. He could clearly sense that all of their presences were unstable. Their vitality fluctuated about, sometimes strong and sometimes weak. A portion of them even seemed like they had reached the end of their lives. They seemed lethargic. Moreover, all of the god kings had gloomy eyes and numb expressions. They gave off a heavy presence of death. They did not possess the energy that regular cultivators did. They're the sacrificial soldiers of the Wei family. Sigh, these people are all tools raised with the 100 Tribulations God King pill. They can only live for 100 years at most. The sacrificial soldiers of the Wei family have been mobilized again. There are actually more than 1,000 of them this time. What is the Wei family doing, mobilizing so many all together? These sacrificial soldiers raised with the 100 Tribulations God King pill are the deterrence trump cards of those peak organizations in the world of the fallen beast. Without them, they wouldn't be able to sustain their business in the world of the fallen beasts. Strange. Why have these large organizations sent sacrificial soldiers into the world of the fallen beast time and time again lately? Is something big going to happen in there? Many cultivators discussed quietly near the street. Jian Chen obtained a lot of information from eavesdropping. 100 Tribulations God King Pill? What kind of pill is that to be able to raise so many God Kings? Jian Chen wondered. He was in great doubt. He immediately clasped his fist at a middle-aged man beside him and asked. The middle-aged man was a mid-God King. He showed a sliver of impatience. Originally, he was reluctant to pay attention to Jian Chen, but when he sensed the vague but tremendous presence Jian Chen gave off, he immediately shivered inside and answered in a hurry, Senior, you must have come to the spirit's world recently, right? It's normal for you to not know what the 100 Tribulations God King Pill is. The 100 Tribulations God King Pill is a pill refined from a heavenly resource that only grows in the world of the fallen beast. The reason why it's called the 100 Tribulations God King Pill is because of its unfathomable power. Even if a mortal who hasn't cultivated at all consumes it, they'll be able to reach God King in an extremely short amount of time. What? There's a pill as incredible as that? Even a mortal can reach God King in an extremely short time after ingesting it? Jian Chen was surprised. The effects of the 100 Tribulations God King Pill had toppled his understanding of pills altogether. Who knows how long and how many resources it would take for a mortal to reach God King. However, he had just heard about a single pill that could elevate a mortal to God King right now. This was no longer a matter of being incredible. It was like a fairy tale. Even though the pill is utterly incredible, it comes with great consequences as well. Anyone who ingests the pill can only live for another 100 years at most. They'll definitely die after the century passes, the middle-aged man continued. A century. Even though it's just a century, it's still not enough to obscure the pill's power. A single pill is equivalent to a God King. If you have several tens of thousand, several hundreds of thousand, or even millions of them, Jian Chen was amazed. He dared not think any further. The middle-aged man smiled bitterly when he heard that. Senior, you can't treat 100 Tribulations God King pills as invaluable as regular heavenly resources. The main material for forging them is 100 Tribulations grass. They only grow in the world of the fallen beast and is extremely valuable. Most of the time, there's none for sale. Normally, only those extremely powerful organizations have the ability to get some from the world of the fallen beast, and it won't be a lot. It's impossible to reach numbers as terrifying as what Senior mentioned. That's because if there really was so much 100 Tribulations grass, the peak sects won't necessarily have the wealth to buy it all. And even if they did, it's impossible for the world of the fallen beast to produce so much. Senior, look at the Wei family. With the tremendous strength of the Wei family, they've basically mobilized everything they have with all these sacrificial soldiers raised with the 100 Tribulations God King pill this time. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.